That morning was not quite ordinary for the young archaeologist Shiyu. He slept peacefully in a room with a large round window. Suddenly, a red-covered book fell from the top shelf and hit him painfully on the forehead. This caused the young man to wake up immediately. He began to rise, groping his injured head, and started twirling around trying to figure out what had happened. Rewinding his memory, Shiyu recalled that he was exploring the ruins and had an accident. He realized that someone had saved him. Looking around, the guy realized that he was not in a hospital, but in some strange room. He got up from the bed and saw his reflection in the mirror in the closet opposite the bed. The archaeologist stared into the mirror and was even more horrified. The reflection moved with him, but the face was alien. Shiyu looked under the blanket in panic. His worst fears turned out to be true. The body was also completely different. The young man almost howled with resentment. Now he would have to forget about all his acquaintances and his family. No one would recognize him with his new body. He remembered that not so long ago he had been a promising young archaeologist. A whole world was opening up before him. The boy reluctantly started to get out from under the blanket. Sooner or later he would have to familiarize himself with the surroundings anyway. Suddenly, Shiyu saw some books with brightly colored covers with his side vision and turned his head with interest. The young man took one of them, hoping that the contents of the books would provide insight into who lived in this room and how he himself had ended up here. Both books were about caring for pets. The archaeologist grudgingly said that he still didn't understand anything. The third book was more interesting. It was a guide to evaluating all kinds of furry girls. The title of the textbook was promising, and the young man happily extended his hand to it. At that moment, he felt an energy pulse from the book. As if from some strange dream, the guy had visions of the futuristic city of Binyuan, unfamiliar to him, and of an animal keeping base. Shiyu had seen with his own eyes experienced beast lords controlling monsters and young boys trying to control animals. Suddenly it hit the young man. Most likely the memories of the past owner of this body came to his mind. The boy looked out the large round window, through which the sunlight was streaming, and realized that he had indeed been reborn. This marvelous Binyuan city, drenched in greenery, was not on Earth at all. From the outside, everything was similar: blue sky and bright sunshine. But he was actually in a distant galaxy on a planet that combined a variety of life forms and called itself the Blue Star. This planet was characterized by the fact that the shape of the creature did not matter. The creature could be a beast, a tree, a mountain, or even the wind. Shiyu twirled the globe held in the air with astonishment and recalled that from the Earthling's point of view, all these animals were divine. However, the people who live here also have their own abilities. They can control animals. Some people can develop their brains through meditation and then tame and control divine beings. It is because of this capability that humans have created a civilization that is referred to as the Age of Animal Control. The beast lords became rich very quickly. Their corporations and beast taming companies appeared almost every day. But not all of the planet had been explored. Particularly strong supernatural animals could not be tamed and often attacked people. The archaeologist stood up from his desk and rubbed his forehead tiredly. No other memories came to his mind. All he could recall was that during one of the large animal attacks, the owner had lost his family and was orphaned. The young man began to understand a little of what the Blue Star was like. This world seemed no better than on Earth. In an amazing coincidence, the owner of this body was also named Shiyu. Unlike the guy, he was not involved in ancient excavations. Like most of the people living here, Shiyu's livelihood was related to taming and breeding animals. His electronic personal assistant offered any and all animal loan terms. After reviewing his current assignments, Shiyu realized with disappointment that he was here as an intern at the animal breeding base. The young man sat down and reached for a practical guide to working at the animal breeding base. He only worked here to become a beastmaster himself. There was a blank loan form in front of the guy. Unfortunately, his life did not turn out well. The trainee's parents died early, leaving only loans and debts. Shiyu decided that in any case, he should first finish with the work that was scheduled for this day anyway. It was necessary to feed the snow wolves from the morning. Given that these animals were very dangerous, he doubted he could do it alone. The guy convinced himself that they couldn't cause any more trouble than a puppy biting passersby's legs anyway. He got here in his day, not only because of his excellent grades, but also because of his ability to transmit thoughts at a distance. With this skill, Shiyu contacted any creatures on the Blue Star. All the beasts understood him perfectly. The young man remembered one of his acquaintances kneeling at the animal's side. If she had that skill, she would have tamed it faster. The guy was now absolutely convinced that thanks to telepathy, he would be able to find common ground even with snow wolves. The trainee decided to practice first and summoned the beast control space, which was in a small colored cube with chiseled edges. The cube shimmered with all the colors of the rainbow. The light was so blinding that he had to close his eyes. After a few seconds, the young man dared to open his eyes and was very surprised. The object in his hands looked different. It was the same cube, but now it was completely transparent. Thanks to the beveled edges, it acted like a prism and reflected several Shi-Yu. In addition, a weighty, brown-covered book decorated with blue crystals fell into the guy's hands out of nowhere. The trainee stared at the folio in amazement. The central diamond-shaped crystal seemed to emit beams of energy. Shi-Yu began to suspect that this book appeared for a reason. It was most likely his second special skill. The book opened. All of the letters were backlit in blue. The young man's new talent called Ability Guide was unlocked. Touching the writing, the guy was surprised to realize that he had managed to become the owner of an additional talent. He remembered that when activating the beast space, people could awaken enhancement talents or specialization talents. Thanks to the enhancement talent, you can increase the combat characteristics of certain types of animals. Specialization talents can be quite different. Some beasts can be strengthened through a combination of talents. The young man's telepathy was also one of the specialization talents. It was the reason why Shi-Yu found a job. The boy was very happy that he had received another talent. This way he would be able to pay off his debts even faster. The new skill allowed the host to copy and record the abilities of supernatural beasts and pass them on to other animals. Shi-Yu avidly read the manual on how to use the talent. He learned that there were 3 conditions to activate the ability. The talent holder had to touch the beast, applying the special skill no later than an hour after using it. In addition, some physical force had to be expended in training the animals depending on the skills. It turns out that the beasts themselves also have inherently very different compatibility with one skill or another. Shi-Yu had to admit that talent had many different limitations, but the end result was clearly worth it. Leafing through the manual further, the young man was surprised to find that the strength of the Beastmaster himself depended on the skills of the animal being tamed. The boy slammed the book shut. He understood the most basic thing. That was enough. With guidance, the rarest talents could be assembled. The trainee frowned at his reflection in the cube. He hadn't been able to retrieve any talent memories from the former owner's memory. One way or another, he found himself in a different world. This already shows that Shi-Yu is not an ordinary person and is capable of many things. The young man thought wistfully that his identity now consisted of the past owner of this body, as well as his new talents. The guy tried to convince himself that it wasn't really that bad. One should take it as compensation for being here. Suddenly, the globe on the table began to spin rapidly. In addition, it blinked intermittently like a strobe light. This signal immediately sobered Shi-Yu. The previous bodymaster's memory told him that he should hurry. The young man immediately jumped down from his comfortable chair and ran towards the exit. He realized that he was late for work. At the research center, the guy was already waiting. The director's voice roared through the entire complex. The man didn't like the fact that his animals were starving. A trainee in an electric truck pulled into the warehouse as fast as he could. He himself realized that the animals needed to be fed on time. Shi-Yu couldn't find the products he wanted for a few minutes and absent-mindedly looked around. On the right, there were employees standing with large boxes. The young man suddenly realized that the food he needed was exactly in these crates with wolves depicted on them. When he looked into the box, he almost groaned with resentment. Now it was clear to him why ordinary people could not become beast lords. The crates were stuffed to the top with selected high-quality meat. The animals here are fed much better than humans. One of the staff saw a young man with a crate in his hands and assumed he had the lot to feed the snow wolves. The second employee warned that the animals were not very friendly. The third guy said that he would be fixed in the infirmary if something happened. The first man grabbed the Joker by the hair and told him it was all nonsense. As long as the Wolf King is at the base, everything is under control. After loading the 3 crates of food onto the electric car, Shi-Yu moved on his way. Unfortunately, he couldn't remember anything about the staff. Apparently, the previous owner of the body was not very sociable and failed to make friends in the workplace. Besides, he didn't need to socialize with others. The trainee didn't seem to have any hobbies that connected him to the world. The young man didn't care what the former owner of his body was doing, but it was strange to be telepathic and not communicate with anyone. He didn't even notice that he had almost reached the base with the pets. Shi-Yu drove up to the kennel with the snow wolves and stopped the electric car. He decided to return to the issue of personal relationships later. The young man unloaded 3 crates of provisions. He was busy and did not see that several pairs of predatory eyes were watching him from the top of the mountain. When he heard the extraneous sounds, the boy turned his head in horror. It was as if he sensed that the pets were watching him. Shi-Yu didn't even have time to unpack the food container before a pack of snow wolves were already nearby and slowly crept towards him. The young man quickly gleaned information about the supernatural beast, whose fangs could easily tear through steel. The collective mind of the wolves gave away their desire. The beasts were very hungry, as the boy was a little late with the feeding. One of the wolves grinned predatorily, making no secret of his intentions. To him, the bipedal creature looked quite appetizing. Shi-Yu tried to smile. He realized that this was an extremely nerve-wracking job. You never know if you will be able to avoid being eaten. When he saw that the wolf's fangs were very close, the young man prayed and mentally asked the Wolf King to save him. The leader heard the telepathic call and immediately rushed to the rescue. His loud howl made everyone freeze in place. The Wolf King walked slowly towards the trainee. He didn't have that anger and aggression in him. There was only arrogance in the leader's eyes. The Wolf King was several times larger than any of them. They scuttled aside, giving way like little puppies. Shi-Yu turned pale at the sight of the huge wolf. He couldn't even imagine that the leader could be so large. The boy's whole body trembled with fear. When he saw the Wolf King coming toward him, the young man involuntarily started to back away. After coming close to the trainee, the huge beast poked his face with its muzzle. Shi-Yu noticed that the touch made him feel very cold. The Wolf King turned the other way and slowly began to walk away. The young man began to suspect that the beast was marking him in this way. He was glad the giant didn't go for the method traditionally used by animals on Earth. Suddenly, the guy noticed that a talent usage guide had appeared next to him and was very surprised. He guessed that the manual had appeared at this moment for a reason, but he couldn't understand the reason. Shi-Yu gingerly picked up the book. As soon as the intern opened the manual, a bright circle with some writing was added to the illuminated blue letters. The young man stared into the blinding circle for a while, trying to figure out what had happened. Turns out, the Wolf King has a new containment skill that allows him to dominate other creatures. After a few seconds, the book slammed shut. The system reported that the containment skill had been successfully memorized. Shi-Yu rejoiced. This meant that he could teach the same skill to any beast that had natural talent. The young man could not be pleased. He was very pleased to have such a powerful animal control system. Suddenly, the guy heard a loud growing growl. The pack leader started to behave aggressively. He didn't like the trainee's behavior. Using telepathy, the Wolf King angrily asked why the man was laughing. He assumed that the young man was mad with fear. Shi-Yu laughed and replied that it was his personal joy. The rest of us didn't need to know that, and declared that it was time for dinner. The guy was now calmly walking between the snow wolves and stroking them. The Wolf King's tag had worked, and the others were docile. Suddenly, the young man found one of the wolves acting strangely. His ears were floppy and his fur was fluffed up. The system immediately suggested that there was an object nearby that could be trained with the recently learned containment skill. The intern rejoiced. He had gotten confirmation of his hunch. The boy's superior talent allowed him to train the Wolf King himself. Shi-Yu thought in time that there couldn't be multiple Wolf Kings at the same time and gave up his scheme. The young man dejectedly stroked the satisfied snow wolves. Unfortunately, it was necessary to keep working. He couldn't wait to copy the other wolves' skills. Most likely, each of them had their own hidden talents. Leaving the kennel with empty crates, the trainee thought it was fine for the first time. He had developed a very rare skill of restraint. Shi-Yu leisurely kept his way to the warehouse. High in the sky, a large eagle with emerald wings soared proudly. The system immediately reported that the subject Green Eagle could be trained in the containment skill. The young man was surprised to realize that not only the Animal King, but also the Bird King could be created with the skill. The intern sighed heavily. If he didn't have to go back to work, he would gladly take care of the Green Eagle. Suddenly, Shi-Yu saw a huge banner. The bamboo base was offering everyone their pandas at a half-price discount. The young man remembered that this was the beast that the former bodymaster had chosen. Pandas on the Blue Star were known as Iron Eaters. Unfortunately, their race was not fully formed, and so pandas only possessed the skill of hardening. The boy observed the pandas' behavior and had to admit that they were pretty cute. He liked his predecessor's choice. The trainee was only confused by the pandas' developmental limitations and their only skill, and the beasts were being given away at half price, which was suspicious. Shi-Yu had his own plan. He decided to use the pandas to mine metals and teach them all the skills available. The young man couldn't help but praise himself. He was sure that other beast lords would not have thought of such a combination. There was one catch, however, and that was nullifying all of the guy's far-reaching plans. He immediately stopped smiling and became sad. It turned out that in order to get the credit, you had to complete a pet base internship and get certified as a breeder. This was not available to interns. Dreaming of gaining superior skills, the lad moved into the warehouse. Now there was nothing else to do but to continue working. At the warehouse, Shi-Yu learned that he needed to go to test area number 1 with the rest of the trainees. A man in a chemical protection suit explained that the entire afternoon was to observe the behavior of the silkworms. The young man looked inside the metal cabinets through the observation window with interest and examined the silkworms up close. He realized that on their own they were rather weak creatures, but in the lab they had been given all the conditions to develop. The trainee called up the system and asked to be shown information about the silkworm. He wondered how the trainee's skills could be improved. Shi-Yu decided that they were quite harmless creatures and bent down to get closer to them, opening the window. He placed one of the specimens on his finger for the sake of interest. The collective mind of the silkworms revolted. All the specimens trembled faintly, their eyes fixed on the offender. The closest of the objects spit out a silk thread. In a fraction of a second, they managed to web the boy's entire face. While trying to free himself from the web, Shiyu thought that the silkworms could defend themselves and was glad that it was painless. The young man looked closely at the small silkworm that was still on his finger. To his surprise, the system notified that this supernatural beast could be trained in restraint skill. The guy couldn't believe that raising a green silkworm king was quite realistic. He didn't even think about the compatibility with the skill. Shiyu leaned over to the cabinet and gently lowered the green silkworm to his tribesman. The beast immediately hid farther away. At the same second, a talent guide appeared in the air. The silk-bound skill was successfully recorded. The young man looked over the brief information on the skill for insects, wondering in passing that it had gone so quickly. The boy couldn't think of a place where he could use this seemingly useless skill. He decided that time would put everything in its place. In addition, it turned out that the silk put skill could be retrained to a green silkworm that had already mastered it. Repeated learning of a skill is necessary in order to increase the mastery of the trained sample. Cautiously glancing at the employee in the chemical protection suit, Shiyu realized that it would be difficult to pull off such an experiment. The young man worked in the lab until the evening with the rest of the interns and did not leave the building until late in the afternoon. Before going to bed, he decided to sit at the computer and learn that there were 51 species of animals in the city. Unfortunately, none of these beasts had the skills the trainee needed right now. Most of the pets raised here had low-level basic skills, and it wasn't worth the cost to copy them. Shiyu didn't know if there was any limit on copying skills, so he decided to focus on the high and medium ones. Suddenly, he remembered a phrase he had overheard. A coworker had told his partner that dandelions were good for healing wounds. It dawned on the young man. Not only animals, but also their lords could be found at the base. He quickly found the location of the infirmary. The guy was very pleased. It turned out that it was not at all necessary to hunt for rare supernatural animals. Shiyu decided not to postpone the attempt until tomorrow and headed to the hospital near his home. The young man walked hurriedly down the deserted corridor. The system told him that the creature with healing skills was here. After a few minutes, the guy found the right door. The green-lit sign at the entrance to the medical office was impossible to miss. The trainee pushed the door open with determination and stepped into the office, holding his wrist. His eyes reflected the intolerable pain. The girl with glasses at the table asked what happened. Shiyu pretended to be in pain and said that he had sprained his wrist. The doctor embarrassedly corrected her glasses and suggested to the handsome young man to come closer. She would take a look at everything. As soon as the guy walked up to the table, it was clear to the medic. These were the kind of trainees who were most likely to be injured. The young man asked if he could work with the injury. The girl sighed tiredly. It was not the first time she had encountered such cases and said she would cure everything. The doctor rested her hand comfortably on her cheek and extended the index finger of her right hand upward. Green pollen began to form around it. The girl smiled. Before the eyes of the surprised boy, the pollen turned into several huge white dandelions. Shiyu smiled. Now he saw that he had come to the right place. Only a beast lord could summon creatures like this. Dandelions clung to his wrist, spreading healing molecules and supposedly repairing damaged tissue. The medic noticed that the patient was feeling better and asked him to hold on a little longer. It will be over in a few minutes. After counting down the allotted time, the girl said affectionately that the pain should have subsided. The young man admitted that his arm had stopped hurting. The visit to the infirmary had added another skill to his handbook. Now the trained animals could be trained to heal quickly. The boy looked at the brief information about the skill and rejoiced. He did well. This skill was quite rare and useful. Shiyu realized that he could just copy the abilities of the beasts in the base. There were still 3 months left until the end of the internship, and there was still plenty of time to do so. The doctor turned to the patient and smiled embarrassedly. She reported that everything should be fine now. Other than that, the dandelions reported that it was nothing serious. The young man's injury was quite minor. He realized he needed to turn the conversation to another topic and promised to be more careful from now on. The guy felt ashamed that because of the fictitious injury, the girl had only wasted her time. He promised himself that he would thank her pets. Shiyu reflected on the fact that even a small application of the pet's strength would increase its skills every time. In addition, you can use the talent and skill guide to speed up pet training. After taking a shower, the young man sat down on the bed. It occurred to him that the girl in the study was only a budding beast lord. The guy remembered that when the master and animals reached a certain level, the lord could apply for certification. Already falling asleep, Shiyu tried to imagine the long road he still had to travel to become a beast lord. The 3 months of internship flew by quickly. The limit of recorded abilities was exhausted. The young man was glad he hadn't wasted time on basic skills. One of the newly acquired skills was foresight. It improved visual perception for feathered patrols. The absolute sleep skill helped the animals fall asleep quickly and effectively restore energy and endurance. The boy dreamed of combining the skills of sleep and healing. Then it would be possible to save a lot of money on treating animals. Shiyu looked over the records and thoughtfully said to himself that 5 skill recording slots for animals was clearly not enough. Most likely, this amount depended on the level of the Beast Lord himself. He decided to summon Beast Space and test his hunch. It turned out that there were many factors influencing this. In particular, the Lord could improve his level through meditation. The most important thing was to constantly increase the size of the Beast Space. It would speed up the learning of skills. The young man smiled. Now he had a goal. He promised himself that he would become a professional beastmaster within a year. The first stage had been achieved. The certificate in his hands was a clear indication of successful completion of the internship at the animal base. After a good meal, Shiyu came to the bus stop. From there, he could go to the panda breeding base. The young man boarded the empty yellow bus and put his travel bag beside him. He remembered that this country was called the Brilliant State of the East. If we compare Binyuan City with the rest of the megacities, we can say that such big cities are in the second place after the capital. Meanwhile, the bus arrived at the right stop. Shiyu found himself in the suburbs of Binyuan. It was the Ping urban area. There were many panda banners in the area. The pandas were extremely popular in the area. The guy got off the bus and headed for the steps. Finally, the long-awaited moment had come, and he could pick up the reserved beast. The young man couldn't wait, and so he immediately switched from pacing to running, barely seeing the signboard of the panda breeding base. Jumping over a few steps, the young breeder shouted happily to his future panda that he had already come for her. By the end of the stairs, Shiyu's enthusiasm had died down a bit. He had a large travel bag in his hands, and it was not easy to get to the top. He was so tired that sweat was pouring down his face. The stairs seemed endless, and he met no one along the way. Suddenly, the future breeder saw the huge creature and was even a little frightened. He raised his eyebrows upward in surprise. This beast seemed like a giant, yet its appearance was very similar to the cute pandas that Shiyu had come here for. The huge beast approached the young man, and the boy fell to the ground in fear and tried to crawl back. To the young man's surprise, the giant panda folded its paws in a bow and politely said hello to him. It turned out to be an employee of Lin Shiuju's base. Shiyu only now saw the service badge on his suit. The young man frowned, cursing himself for showing fear, and thought that the administration could have hired more adequate staff. The man asked not to be surprised, as it was only a panda costume. The boy angrily thought he was surprised just because of that. Shiyu introduced himself and touched the tight panda suit. He asked if it was hot inside such an outfit. Lin Shiuju explained that he must feel the panda's moods. He must understand them. The young man agreed with the statement. The employee said he remembered the guy. He was an intern at the pet breeding base. Shiyu was surprised to realize that the voice belonged to a girl. He embarrassedly said that he had only recently graduated and didn't know much. His knowledge was still far from Teacher Lin's. Hugging the guest, the girl thanked him and promised a couple of costumes at a discount. The young specialist frowned. He had hoped to get a discount on the panda itself. Lin Shuju suggested that they go to the demonstration hall first. She moved surprisingly fast on the stairs in such a costume. Once inside, the girl first of all freed herself from the huge panda head and quickly removed it. The employee who was hiding her appearance in a panda costume turned out to be a very attractive dark-haired girl. Jumping out of her costume, she was left in shorts and a raglan, which stylistically also featured a panda. Shiyu realized that Lin Shuju was just obsessed with pandas. He hoped that at least he wouldn't have to buy this sweatshirt. The girl led the customer to the ordering table, behind which stood a man in a blue shirt and pants. She explained that this was where all the materials were located. Lin Shuju said that the panda could be obtained today. The young man asked if he could choose an animal right now. The girl replied that he had come a little late. The pandas had already been dismantled. Now there was only one animal left. A little embarrassed, the female employee admitted that this specimen was a bit problematic. Shiyu realized that he was in an unpleasant situation. Lin Shuju gave a short tour and showed the pandas. All of them were either sleeping in a secluded place, some were dozing among the bamboo. A guy and a girl were walking across a large observation bridge. It was located high above the pavilion with pandas and did not embarrass them. One of the smaller pandas was asleep on a small tree branch, hooked onto it with its hind paws. The young man smiled as he looked at the cute animals and said that these creatures were indeed very passive. Lin Shuju stopped at one of the stairs and pointed at one of the pandas. She replied that the panda cubs were behaving more lively. Xia Yu immediately liked the proposed specimen. He asked admiringly if he could have the panda. The animal was not acting very friendly. Its eyes gave away its dislike of the stranger looking at it. The boy and girl started to go downstairs. The boy took a closer look at the panda and said that the animal looked normal. Suddenly, right in front of their eyes, The panda jumped from its seat and slammed its head into a tree. Shiyu confusedly recognized that this was not a particularly intelligent animal. After flying headfirst into a tree trunk, the glass-eyed panda ricocheted backwards like a plastic doll. When the animal had completed its flight, it sat down on the ground with its head bowed. The animal could guess from the look on its face that it did not understand anything. The girl explained that the beast's appearance in the world was not easy, and that is why it differs from others by its poor development. All the other cubs developed their abilities in their first year of life, but this specimen was never able to awaken them. The employee said that because of the late awakening of the force, he has a negligible chance of mastering the skills. Pandas are actually very peaceful creatures and don't get into fights. He's just practicing his physical strength by hitting the tree. Lin Shuju reported that this beast was constantly practicing, trying to awaken its abilities. Shiyu hesitated for a moment. This panda was indeed a bit of a problem. The girl added that a lot depended on innate talent. The boy had an afterthought. He summarized with interest that this animal had no talent but was very industrious. The girl cautiously replied that this was generally the case. The beast develops slower than the others, but is suitable for the animal control space. Lin Xiuzhu realized that she had a chance to get rid of the problem cub, and added that there are very few such determined pandas. She had to admit that the beast's sleep and rest patterns were off, and nutrition was also a problem. Before training, it would be necessary to adjust the regimen. Now the young man had no more doubts, and exclaimed joyfully that this was the kind of beast he wanted. The guy wasn't being dishonest. He really didn't want to get a standard passive panda who would only eat and sleep. The employee couldn't believe she could so easily get rid of the strange cub, and questioned the customer if he was sure of the purchase. Shiyu stated that he was impressed with the panda's hard work ethic. They should become friends. He asked if there would be a discount on the animal. The girl sadly said there was nothing she could do, but agreed to add a month's supply of bamboo if the guy would take this panda. The young breeder was very pleased and enthusiastically thanked his interlocutor for the favor. He warmly embraced her hand. Lin Shuju walked over to copy number 11 and informed him that they wanted to take him away. She asked if the beast was happy about it. The panda turned her head unhappily. Its eyes blazed with hatred. It was obvious that the beast didn't like both visitors. Activating the telepathy skill, Shiyu easily read the panda's thoughts. The beast cried out in his heart that he would never become a slave. Standing up on his hind legs, he shouted angrily to himself that pandas are not afraid of anyone or anything. They don't need overlords. Of course, the girl knew none of this. The young man looked thoughtfully at his animal. The panda did have a temper. Lin Shuju got angry and pinned the aggressive animal with its belly to the ground so that the beast only kicked the grass helplessly with its hind paws. The girl explained that with the help of the beast lord, the panda would awaken its innate abilities much faster. The animal looked at the employee of the base incredulously. The guest creepily said that the living conditions would be much better there. The panda slowly began to believe the girl and was no longer so aggressive. The young man calmly watched the animal. The panda raised her head and looked at the young man closely. She realized that the boy was reading her mind and pointed her finger in his direction. The beast telepathized that the host should take care of food and comfortable living. Shiyu thought back that there was no money for that right now. Confused with joy, the panda declared that pandas will never be slaves. They are undaunted if not provided shelter and food. The girl saw it all a little differently. She thought that the cub had just accepted his situation. Lin Shuju let go of the panda and returned to the young man. She said that the pet was quite sensible. He was lucky to have it. Guy mentally asked the beast what kind of living environment is considered ideal for pandas and what kind of food they adore the most. He instilled in his pet that he would become a professional animal lord, but to do that, his pet had to work hard on himself. Shiyu asked if they could sign the contract. The girl smiled and asked her interlocutor to go to the office. She would come back later. The young man walked over to the panda and leaned over it. He stretched his hand over the panda's head and concentrated a bundle of green energy. The boy knew that the pet's lack of skill could be easily remedied in the beast lord's personal space. The panda watched mesmerized by the green pollen that enveloped the space around her, forming something strange. Lin Shuju noticed the beast's restlessness and asked it to sit still for at least a few minutes. Meanwhile, the future beast lord was making eye contact with the future pet. He knew that this panda, who was shunned by congeners and beast lords, would definitely become stronger with him. Immersing himself in the green space more and more, the pet pointed a finger at his master as if he wanted to tell him something. In the same second, he was enclosed in a transparent greenish cube. This was the Beastmaster's personal space. This operation required more effort than the young man had originally intended to expend. He was very tired, as if he had been working all day. Because Shiyu had encased the pet in his spatial shell, the guy himself was surrounded by a green glow. He was very hot. Suddenly, it was all over. The breeder managed to activate the instant healing skill for his panda. He stood up and stretched happily. Lin Shuju congratulated the client. He had managed to successfully contract his animal. She advised him not to summon it too often. The girl explained that the animal's skills could manifest much faster if it got used to the atmosphere inside the space. The system reported that the pet contract had been successfully completed. The physical performance of the Beastmaster had also been improved. Shiyu remembered how the female employee had managed to overpower the panda. He smirked and remembered that he had helped her by taking some of the pet's strength. The base staff member noticed that her interlocutor had frozen in place and worriedly asked what had happened to him. Feeling a touch on his shoulder, the young man turned around and replied that there was a change in his body. He wasn't used to it yet. Lin Shuju replied that it was always strange at first, but then you just stop noticing and it becomes the norm. The girl asked me to fill in my address for bamboo delivery. It must always be fresh. She said that you can come to their base for a new batch. Shiyu said he had one small request. Lin Shuju was embarrassed and looked at her interlocutor carefully. She was afraid that the guy would start making friends. A young man asked if he could come here to learn more about the natural habitat of pandas. The girl rejoiced. She replied enthusiastically that the owner could come back here with his pet at any time. The base staff member smiled and hastily added that the food wouldn't be free. Shiyu was also happy that he could raise the panda's skills. The paperwork took some time, so the young man didn't get down to the bus stop until 2 hours later. He remembered the only skill for pandas called solidification, and decided that it was a very useful skill. With this ability, the pet could become invulnerable to the attacks of other beasts, but still continue to attack itself. Back in his home neighborhood, the boy ran joyfully down the alley. He was very happy that he had finally returned home. There was an enclosed abandoned yard not far from his house. It could be used for training. Shiyu glanced glumly at the pile of trash in the left corner and thought that this place needed to be tidied up. The young man let his pet number 11 out and with a smile asked him to help clean up the patio a bit. The panda looked at him with devoted eyes. She was ready to fulfill any wish of her master in exchange for skills. The boy crouched down beside the pet. He liked this small-sized beast more and more. Shiyu knew he could make friends with it. The panda climbed onto his knee and hugged his arm with her paw. It was obvious that she liked the change of scenery. The young man hugged his pet happily. Of course, he wasn't going to make him do anything. He could do the cleaning himself. Master looked the panda in the eye and telepathized the idea that he was going to teach it the hardening skill. The pet raised its head incredulously. After many unsuccessful attempts, the beast no longer believed that he could learn the skill. At that very moment, the pet felt a strong flow of energy. He didn't understand what it meant yet, but he guessed that it was very important. The next moment, the panda proudly straightened up to her full height. It felt incredibly strong. Shiyu also immediately noticed the change in the pet. Of course, he was very happy, but he didn't expect it to happen so quickly. After analyzing all of his beast's actions, the young man was surprised to realize that all he needed to do to awaken the skill was sleep. The guy was glad that the Beast Lord's space had sped up the process. Lin Shu said that it would take a week for this to happen. Shiyu decided that it was time to get down to business. Setting the pet down in front of him, the young man impressed upon it that it was time to clean up the yard. The beast slammed its eyes shut in incomprehension. He couldn't understand what his master was trying to accomplish. The word was unfamiliar. The Beast Lord sighed heavily and telepathized the thought that he would try to teach him the skills again. He looked over his pet's skills and concluded that it would take at least a month to train him to a decent level. If you use a skills training guide, it can speed up the learning curve and it will only take a few days. The only problem was that the guidebook required too much energy. Shiyu decided to find another way out. To begin with, he decided to test improving the green silkworm skill and see how much energy it would take. Since the panda was incompatible with the skill for silkworms, the young man frantically looked around. Fortunately, the object he wanted showed itself a moment later on the branch of a tree that stood in the corner of the courtyard. Shiyu rejoiced and ordered his pet to attack the green creature and pointed out where to look for it. The young man warned that this was his first battle after awakening the skill, and it should be taken seriously. At the same second, the beast took off and rushed toward the tree with the speed of the wind. He couldn't fail his first mission. When he reached the tree, the panda jumped on it and deftly climbed higher. Once above the branch with the silkworm, the animal stopped. With precisely timed movement, the pet jumped onto the branch with the insect. The branch crunched under his weight, and they flew downward. The little silkworm was still too young, so he didn't realize what had happened. A premonition of something bad made him weep. In the same second, the insect landed on the huge soft pad on the panda's paw. The pet quickly realized what to do. Silkworm couldn't believe he had survived. He looked at his savior with tears of gratitude in his eyes. Seeing his pet together with the silkworm, Shiyu was overjoyed. This was exactly the result he had been waiting for. Taking advantage of the confusion, the test insect jumped out of the panda's paw in an attempt to sneak away. The pet squeezed his paw in surprise, but it was too late. The green silkworm was halfway to a solid surface. Upon reaching the grass, the insect scurried away with all its legs, realizing that it wouldn't be hunted just for fun. Shiyu realized that there was only one try. He couldn't let such a superb specimen escape. In front of the surprised pet, the beast lord fell to his knees, trying to catch the insect that had just escaped. Shiyu held the little green monster in his hands, looking at it interestedly. He was angry because he had been caught, so he splashed something from his mouth right at the young man. Green cobwebs appeared in the air as if a spider had just started weaving a net. She spent 3 whole months at the internship. He knows what it's like to catch silkworms. He told the monster to be quiet or he'd feed him to his panda. Meanwhile, the panda was already drooling, asking himself if it was even okay to eat this. The silkworm has calmed down a bit and seems to have fallen asleep. They can be trained, that's the benefit. The kid took the monster in his hands, shrieking that he wanted to learn the silkworm's status and train it. Shiyu's energy immediately began to flow into the silkworm's body, training it and filling it with strength. The green monster was slightly startled after receiving a strong charge of strength, but it did not move. Shay kept going, but eventually fell to his knees. This process is very exhausting. Suddenly fatigue came over him, followed by a feeling of hunger. Except, after returning her attention to the silkworm, Shiyu's eyes widened. Another pattern appeared on the monster's body, which means it was just a success! In an instant, the experience of using the skill multiplied in the silkworm's mind, and it became many times stronger. Then the green one smiled evasively. Did he have some kind of plan? What's the man up to? After a second, Shiyu had already seen the monster's plan. It jumped off his palms abruptly. Then he made a couple movements in the air, as if planning to fly off somewhere. However, the silkworm was still smiling achidically, and later released a new batch of threads. Those threads, more like spiderwebs, fastened Shay's wrists together like handcuffs. He looked at it with a smile. The silk threads had indeed become stronger than before, except even though the strength had increased, it was still very weak for him. Shiyu caught a silkworm. He has nothing to be afraid of, after all, everything is fine. Except that can it be said that his rank has increased to the level of trained? The quality of the silk threads matches the silkworms grown on the base. The development rank may be different, but the skill level is high. But in addition to the skill level, you also need to increase the development rank. Is it possible that silkworms have deep understanding? In any case, the experiment was a success. Now we need to see if it is possible to teach him other skills. Shiyu rummaged through his book, looking for information. Upon stumbling upon it, the young man shrieked. Yui looked at everything with round eyes of surprise. It says that you need a cooldown as well. That's fine in principle, but if you do that all the time, his body will become exhausted. It's kind of like a defense mechanism. Eating and sleeping is the best way to recover. The skill has no level, and the recovery time is a full 8 hours. In such a case, it will take about 2 days for low-level skills to recover. And what to speak about medium and high-level? Perhaps there are foods or badas for accelerated recovery? Shiyu cowered at his little panda pet. The latter responded to the gaze. The silkworm was in the cage. Maybe we won't have to wait for the skill reset to finish. And since there are potential pet drugs, there are potential lord drugs too. Since the time was already late, Shiyu decided to cook pork with young bamboo shoots and rice for dinner. 11 can rest for now. He'll call me when he's done cooking. The panda was perplexed. How could he sit and rest when he had finally awakened his ability? He's already so far behind his peers. He wants to train here and now. A dangerous light flashed in the panda's eyes. He wants to train, right now. Except Shu only said that Lin Shuju was right and the panda has a problem. Does he think it's better not to eat before practicing? 11 spun in place. He needn't worry so much. His situation was special and he didn't need to rest. Shiyu exhaled, saying, All right, the little panda can practice in the courtyard. Except they don't have the specialized equipment anywhere yet. So where do we get it? Whoa, though. First, 11 needs to practice holding and blocking solidification. Panda needs to hone the skill to activate the ability as soon as possible and use it on a specific body part. 11 smiled contentedly, gesturing an okay sign. He'll do anything. Shay's in over his head. He knows that his new friend wants to trash the place, and he just got here. There's still money to be made. He can raise green silkworms. Those can produce silk products that may sell well. It is necessary to have time to deal with silkworms along with the panda. But a little later, when his skill level increases, the quality of the silk will be much better. Then the spider will finance the family. Toward nightfall, the young man stacked the dirty plates in the sink. He was very tired for the day. And 11 did a very good job today. It's been a busy day. Toth doesn't like to eat before a workout, except that he continues to work hard after eating. Could he be worried that without diligence, he'll be alone again? Oh no, Shay won't let that happen. Panda has done a good job, now it's time to send him into the Beast Lord's space. As the boy lay down on the bed, a thought came into his mind. Why is that guy so poor? He doesn't have a phone or a computer. If he had known before, he wouldn't have sent 11 into the Lord's space. He's never even hugged a panda. The sky was clear for the morning. Only small clouds flew quickly over the houses. The silkworm let its web into a large nearby branch with leaves. He already had a couple leaves in his cage, so he was picking more of them. Apparently that's what he was feeding on, because when he got a new part of the leaves, he quickly sent them into his mouth. Suddenly the door of the house opened loudly, causing the spider to choke. Shiyu flew out of the house with fully replenished strength, shrieking that he was chipper today. The cooldown has been successfully completed, which means that he can now teach new skills. You can try to teach the skill of tempering today, but before you do, you need to check the White Lotus. You'll find the remedies he needs there. Let 11 rest for now. Shay will go shopping and let him out afterward. Shiyu turned to look at the silkworm. How could he forget to say hello to him? There were a lot of leaves in that one's cage. Did he use his power to get them? Silkworm seemed indifferent to everything around him, and one that was frankly strange. Other silkworms eat as many nutritious plants as possible in order to grow and develop. This one doesn't care. He eats persimmon leaves and doesn't care to look for something else. No wonder he was so thin. If he hadn't taught him the skill, he wouldn't have been able to accomplish the second transformation. On the way back, he'll pick more plants to diversify his diet. He can't afford the cool plants like at the bases. However, there are also many nutrients in ordinary plants. Shiyu can't let the silkworm die of malnutrition. Going out into the street where crowds of people were walking around, the guy thought how things had changed around here. The traffic light switched from red, which is the color for passers-by, to green, which is the color for cars. A peculiar car, more like a carriage, immediately passed along the road. It was pulled by 2 dogs. This is what Shiyu understands about environmental care, even though animals are used and not for their intended purpose. Suddenly, someone started running in his direction. The young man heard shouting. Someone was calling for the gem cat to stop. Some girl with red curls was running after her cat, who was most likely named Zuzong. Shiyu watched this. Is she walking the cat, or is the cat walking her? Pets must be more disciplined. A young man walked past a cat shelter. These animals are generally not contracted with. There were a lot of jewelry on the display case. The abilities of the cat's pupil self-color can be activated thanks to the jewels. However, right now, gems were priced higher than cats. Without jewelry, a cat like this is just a pet. But with the ability activated, it's a great fighter. Shiyu was forced out of his thoughts by a green lotus pattern. He had found the store. It was just as green inside as it was outside. That's strange because the name says White Lotus, not green. The young man was greeted by the salesman behind the cash register, asking if there was anything he could do to help. Shay immediately asked the seller if he could sell silk from them. It turned out that he could, but there were certain requirements for feeding the silkworms. Once they are convinced of the high quality of the silk, they can take it for sale. The young man behind the cash register took out something and handed it to Shay. It was a booklet to be familiarized with. Taking a moment to read it, Shiyu's eyes immediately glittered. He liked these sums. Given the necessary expenditures, he and the panda could live primping for a year. Selling silk is quite a lucrative business. You just have to get the silk to perfection. Then he can cover all the costs of training a panda. The cashier asked, "Is Shay by any chance a beastmaster?" He replied that he wasn't yet and asked to punch 2 bottles of the remedy. The kid looked at Shiyu incomprehensibly, however. He still punched in his funds. It was hard without my phone, especially with such huge bags over my shoulders. The lack of a phone played a bad trick on the guy, and he was unable to pay for his bus ticket. As soon as the young man has money, he will buy himself a phone right away. Back at home, Shiyu finally placed all the purchases on the table, humming something under his breath. He bought light spirit capsules, which are important for living beings. The action is quite simple, and their main function is to eliminate the weakness of the body. They allow a person with a weakened body to get back to normal and feel alert. Now Shay can't afford to chew them like candy, but with the drug, he can mineralize the body burden of animal training. Finally, as the young man had promised, he began to release their 11th world lord. A couple seconds later, the panda appeared on the floor, this time more awake than before. 11 stretched briskly, stretching his back and coming out of his so-called hibernation. This is one of the miraculous effects of the Beast Lord space, which helps. After looking around the room the panda found himself in, he looked determinedly at Shu. He wants to train, preferably now, a training session of 6 or even 8 hours. Except Shiyu said to wait. What about the balance between work and rest? Doesn't the panda know whose energy it's taking? Most of the energy the panda absorbs is Shu's energy. On the one hand, you have to think about improving the space, and on the other hand, you have to use a reference book. He will regain his strength through sleep, which he will also teach the panda. Then he will learn what balance is. Shiyu took 11's cheeks and massaged them a little while. The panda smiled. The moment his new friend relaxed, the young man called for a guidebook and training. The silkworm was watching them from his cage, which was suspended from a tree. The panda began to glow. The energy from Shi's body gradually transferred into his body. It was as if fireflies were sparkling around 11, while the kid was exhausted. The difference in consumption between silkworms and pandas isn't that much different. It's not as bad as he thought. Anyway, there's not much strength left. It's good to have a cure. After taking the golden pill, Shiyu felt better. It felt very good, and fortunately, she didn't have to faint. When all pain was gone, the young man shifted his curious gaze to his pet. The serious expression on my face immediately changed to a smile at the sight of this baby panda. The panda was glowing with power and energy. He had even moved to a new level. 11 charged his paw with power, clearly glad he could do it. Then he swung, still continuing to charge the paw with all the energy he could. Pandochka hit the ground, which made part of the plot just shudder. Shiyu was shocked, so he opened his mouth wide, grabbing his head. "What is 11 doing?" Panda, meanwhile, stared in horror at the cracked ground after his blow. She said, "Of course his strength has become stronger. He's at the level of a trained person. There's nothing to be surprised about. The guy thinks his fighting power must be doubling, maybe even more." The panda looked at his master admiringly, asking what on earth he was doing to him. Shiyu smugly looked at the panda. "So is he ready for training?" 11 was perplexed. He had done nothing, and his abilities had improved so much. It goes against nature, and the level makes him feel obligated. At these words, Shu offered to give the energy back because actually, it already belonged to him. 11 immediately waved his paws, saying that they'd better leave it alone. Although this level of skill is not to his credit, but it can be compensated for. As punishment, he can practice for 24 hours and stay up all night. Sha was shocked. If manhwa authors were as disciplined as a panda, he would always have something to read. Now it's settled. 24 hours of training is not just training, it's training to death. After a while, Shiyu was sitting on the porch while the panda was studying. Though the stamina consumption is about the same, except the cooldown time is much longer this time around. The guidebook said we'd have to wait a full 24 hours. Now a skill of the 11th attained trained level. He has become much more enduring, so is able to control everything better. He can activate the skill for half a minute. The skill's cancel speed has also increased. The key now is to increase the speed of skill use, and at the same time, harden a specific body part. So far, there is nothing more to say about the content of the training. There is no program yet, as this site and house are too fragile. Subsequent curing workouts will require specialized equipment, which is expensive. 11th is persistently practicing, and the energy consumption in the beast space has consequently increased. Strength determines the control of the beast in the Lord's space. This is important for those who nurture wild and strong beasts. Volume, or rather how many pets a Lord contracts with, is an important point for Lords that prefer to fight in groups. The environment determines the effectiveness of nutrition, growth, and skill development. 11 was raised on a special without. Therefore, he is very different from wild animals, and Shiyu doesn't need to think about improving his discipline. And he has no desire to contract with the second beast, so the expansion of space can be forgotten. So the priority now is to create a happy environment for the panda. With his discipline, he just needs to be well fed. So very soon it will grow and become strong. Alas, after that, food costs will increase. However, in any case, for his baby panda to grow and develop, it's all worth it. The next day, Shiyu sat on the porch again while the panda meditated. The silkworm was eating various leaves and berries in its cage, quietly chomping. Shu held the capsule he had purchased at the store for a large sum of money. He sat in the lotus posture, holding his hands with the capsule at the level of his stomach. The transformation of space was almost complete. After the training, 11 will be in a completely renovated cabin. Today, he is as disciplined as usual. Tomorrow, they will practice the intensity of hardening. Even the next day, the weather did not change. It was still sunny, and the clouds floated above the high-rise buildings. Someone knocked on the door loudly and impatiently, and Shiyu shouted that he was on his way. These came in the alloy steel plates he ordered. He was told they could be returned if there were any problems. Once everything was unloaded onto the property, the young man said goodbye to them. They'll be tested for quality by his little 11. He'll do it properly. There was a strange feeling when the 11th was summoned. It had never happened before. The panda started to fall down. Some strange flags were attached to it. He became professionally like he was the main character of some comic book or manga. This is the fourth awakening transformation. Improving the environment in the Lord's space was a great decision. Sha smiled and said that everything was fine. He would buy the panda some goodies and give him a nice dinner. He's got something they're going to start practicing hardening intensity with. And since the panda will be able to destroy anything he wants in the yard. 11 turned tail to Sho. The latter asked incomprehensibly, did he want him to hit him? Pet smiled, saying that pandas are very brave and not afraid of pain. Shiyu said that he wasn't going to hit him at all, and he got upset. What do you mean he's not going to paralyze him? It's ineffective. The guy just said he's got it all set up. Behind him is high-grade alloy steel. He won't allow the yard to be destroyed, but the plates are. If the panda finds that he is too weak or the training is ineffective, he should put them on the ground in several layers. And let the planet help him train as well. Gravity to the rescue. One can jump onto the slabs, for example, from a tall tree in their small yard, or from the high roof of their cottage, which would also serve to help the panda. You have to use solidification and jump down. Shay called it fall training. You can also change the efficiency by choosing the height of the roof. Well, isn't that more effective than hitting him with a club? And once he's trained enough to jump from the heights of the clouds, he'll be unrivaled. The panda jumped up and called his master a genius. After a while, the silkworm turned his attention to the pair. Eating his leaves, he choked looking at it all and went cold. A kind of sweat ran down his head, of course, if worms can sweat at all. The 11th fell onto the slabs with great speed, destroying everything with a single paw. The panda was confident, and his gaze was a mix of joy, anger, and confidence. As he fell, he shattered all 2 slabs that he had placed underneath him, making a huge split. Then he stood confidently on his 2 hind paws, his front paws at his sides. 11 was proud of himself. When he felt the unpleasant prick, he looked at his right paw, not realizing what had happened. There were a couple of wounds on it, as it was the same paw that had pierced the iron plates. However, this was not a problem, for the panda possessed the power of speed healing. It only took a couple minutes to fully heal his paw. After using this power, the one raised his hands joyfully. There was still an undissipated power that was in the air around him. A few slabs had already been broken, so 11 reached for a new batch. Listening to the thuds from the house, she was sure that practicing with these plates was effective. His hardening skill has reached an experience level. Plates are a great aid in hardening training. Oh, and moreover, these pandas are able to digest iron, so it's a great pet food. Silkworm had also undergone the 4th transformation of awakening. His silk weaving skill had reached a trained level. Now the strength of silk could be compared to fishing line. It is as intelligent as humans. The business of improving silkworms has a greater future. Thanks to the drugs he bought, he was able to actively train the 11th and the baby for 10 days. Fatigue during pet exercise is similar to fatigue after physical activity. The skill levels are beginner, trained, experienced, fine, perfect. His panda is already at the experience level and has awakened as many as 5 times. It can also harden any part of the body, and the silkworm has awakened 4 times. It's a good time to evaluate the results. After being called out to fight for real, the panda lit up, clutching the iron in his hands. For a pet to grow and develop properly, you need to pay attention to 3 components: nutrition, training, and of course, battles. For him and 11, the priority now was certainly not deadly battles, but a battle with an equally strong opponent. We cannot go to facilities that do not inspire confidence and where the pet may be harmed. According to the guide, they have a great opportunity to develop. Now it's time to plunge into the harsh conditions and finally fight against stronger opponents. In order to become a professional lord, you must pass a field survival exam. But if you need to gain experience in this direction, you can take part in a competition organized by the Beast Lords. However, it is still best to be able to turn to professionals. Shiyu had taken a bus to a faraway place, and now, fortunately, that bus had arrived. The guy entered the building and approached the girl behind the counter, asking for a battle here and an explanation of how things work here. Ta picked up the monitor and said that the arena provides battlegrounds. The monitor displayed the arenas. Shu explained that he could choose a specific battle, or he could rely on chance. Concrete involves a battle agreed upon with your opponent, in which case the arena provides only a room, referee, and medical services. Random battles, on the other hand, are divided into categories, from the 1st to the 6th and from the 7th to the 10th levels of pets. The enemy is matched by their company. But, regardless of the choice, the fee to use the site is 100 yuan per person. Shiyu was dissatisfied with such a price. He could eat for 3 days for this money. The girl went on to say that the price includes court maintenance, referees, and medicine. Ta forgot to mention the betting as well. Both participants in the battle can place bets, and the losing side covers all costs for the use of the venue and for the winner. That is, the losing side will have to pay 200 yuan, and the winner in turn, nothing. Shiyu immediately said that he would choose a bet in the 1st to 6th level range and bet. Right now, his panda was at level 5, so even if the opponent was a level 6 beast, they wouldn't lose. In order to save money, it would have to be done. If they fail, he admits weakness. He was snapped out of his thoughts by a request to fill out a form. Here, Shiyu clarified. Was it possible to make additional bets? It flashed through his mind that he needed to squeeze out opportunities to the fullest. The girl apologized, saying it was out of their scope of business, and Shay got upset. He was handed a number and told to wait in the lobby. Once the opponent was picked up, the screen would display his name, number, and the location of the match. The guy happily walked past the front desk while another guy was filling out a form there. His handwriting was jagged and sharp, as if he wanted to jab someone with the lines. His classmates are too weak to not make him doubt the outcome of the battle. How long will it take to develop a lord under such conditions? No age limit, just a level. He hopes that that beast lord is a trainee and will have something to learn from him. Except he's already the best. He doesn't doubt his own abilities. I mean, what's it like to lose? He never loses and he won't let himself lose. Finally, the number 4399 sounded. Shiyu called out to pad 11. Number 4401 was also called out. Chen Kai also went to pad 11. Shay finally made it to the front of the court. Not bad because it looks like a home game. His pet panda's name is 11, and there's a sudden drop-off in the 11th court. Well, they're certainly not going to lose. Suddenly, a young man appeared from behind, already nearby. Shiyu looked at him strangely. Both young men simultaneously thought the same thing. This is my opponent. Finally, those entered the court. The guys were greeted by a nice man that would be the court manager and referee. Now they have the plavo of using this particular site, but only for 1 hour. They can start whenever they want, and he acts as the referee. It was very noisy because of the number of spectators that came to watch the competition. However, everyone could clearly hear the two guys at the same time say that they were ready to fight now. Shiyu arrogantly looked at his opponent, ready to win already. The lad waved his hand to the side, calling for the space of the Beast Lord to disperse. He summoned his panda. A green portal with the image of a panda appeared behind him. A green ball formed in the air with the pet inside of it grumbling. He still had the strange red scarf tied around his neck, but it suited 11. He immediately dropped down beside his lord on all 4 paws, looking moderately forward. A biography with the levels of development and skills of the panda immediately appeared in front of the audience. After which, Chen Kai also began to call for space to disperse. He waved with both hands, looking confidently ahead. He was definitely confident of his victory, too. A portal formed behind the young man with the badge of his animal. The man shouted for him to come. A huge block of ice appeared in the air that seemed fashioned to fill the entire arena. But an animal that looked something like an anteater burst out of it. It was wearing a huge armor. The one also fell down beside his master, looking at the panda and preparing to tear it to pieces. A biography of this beast was also formed in front of the audience and the opponent. A level 6 ice-armored beast. Everyone in the lobby shrieked, calling out to watch the rookie bout that popped up on the scoreboard. 2 girls stood on the second floor. One of them pointed at the monitor. There would be a battle soon. The girl with pink hair also noticed it. The friend shifted her attention to Chen Kai. He has a form like hers after all. The damsel replied that that one was a classmate of hers, and he was just incredibly strong. There are few people that can compete with him. Ice Stab has reached the 6th rank and has sufficiently mastered Ice Claw armor. Shiyu has a panda like her. In the girl's experience of growing a panda, she thinks the one will lose. If he hasn't mastered the hardening of a trained level, he's going to have a hard time, and pandas are not very active. The pink-haired girl chose the panda because they are cute. However, if she had the chance to choose again, the panda would not be a priority. But even if a panda reaches the level of a trained panda, it's not a given that it will win. Let the gutting characteristics of an adult panda surpass the strength of any ice beast. However, now we are talking about a young Iron Eater, not one of those at all. Finally, Chen Kai made his move, telling his beast to summon strength now. And he used an Ice Claw, aiming his paws right at the young panda. The judge, on the other hand, was quietly evaluating. It was a great start, worthy of a student of a top school. The ice beast's eyes glittered in the spotlight that was directed at them. Shiyu immediately reacted by commanding the panda. He said to use solidification. The panda, glaring angrily and with confidence at his opponent, smiled as if ready for it. He used the power, charging his paws with it and obeying the command. His peculiar cloak almost came off. The claw touched the 11th, already ready to take the little guy's head off and win. Except the panda reflected the blow, completely destroying the ice claw and forcing the beast to step aside. The little panda looked like a winner, his cape developing in the wind. Chen Kai was shocked. How did his ice beast claw fail? It was simply impossible. Except at this point, the panda wasn't ready to let go of his opponent, and the beast was shocked. Not only 11, but Sha didn't want to leave without a victory, so he gave the command to attack. The kid jumped high into the air like some kind of superhero. The height of his leap amazed the beast. Tom was ordered to use the ice armor now, as soon as possible. Of course, the beast didn't dare to interfere, especially during the battle, so he began to use force. His ice armor appeared in a few seconds, tightly protecting his body. Meanwhile, the panda flew, definitely about to do to her what he had done to the iron slabs. The kid flew into his opponent with tremendous speed, recoiling with the impact all over his body. Under the small paw of this almost infant, the armor began to crack. This turn of events surprised and made even the ice beast afraid. Chunks of ice just started to fall away from his skin as 11 was happy. Shiyu was also very happy, excited about their eventual victory in the fight. Chen Kai, on the other hand, was simply furious and ordered him to summon the ice armor again as soon as possible. The ice beast was thrown back against the wall with a huge whirlwind right behind Chen Kai's back. That one was very angry, thought it was unscientific. How was that even possible? Kai was diligently training his ice beast. How could they lose? Meanwhile, Shi was ecstatic. If he had known that the panda would perform so well, he wouldn't have fed him. When everyone ran up to the beast, Shu became frustrated. This wasn't exactly what he meant by an equal fight. Apparently, in order to really assess their strengths, you have to find a stronger opponent. The judge was perplexed. So this was the strength of a panda that had mastered an experience level solidification. However, how could this be possible? It's a level 5 toddler, yet it was able to allow an entire beast. The girl with pink hair watched skeptically. Could pandas reach that level? Her friend smiled, saying that her classmate had lost. She pretended to be mistaken. A level 5 young devourer that has mastered the skill of solidifying at the experienced level surpasses all boundaries. That kid is definitely not the one with the golden spoon, however, a first-class beast lord. She hopes that Chen Kai will bear it with dignity. Watching as his ice beast lay there without Sis, Kai was shocked. Who were these two people anyway? The boy noticed a strange movement in his side vision. He turned around and saw the Iron Eater. 11 waved one of his paws at his opponent's host as if to mock. Chen was terrified. He still belonged in school because there were no monsters in society. The panda made the strange gesture again. Hardly anyone from down under got up at 4 in the morning to bang steel plates. The judge declared that the ice beast could no longer fight and defeated Shi and his panda. He and 11 smiled victoriously and Shay patted the pet on the head. He sent the panda into the beast lord's space to rest for a while. Chen Kai, when the panda left, asked Shou if the or is the animal lord of Pincheng. He lost, however he must, and wants to make sure he just got lucky. Kai hopes so. Shi said he graduated from university this year but attended in withdrawals in Binyuan. The loser knew that Pingcheng district is a suburb of Binyuan, so the level there is not as high as in the city. Although he can be called an outstanding student in Pincheng, however, he can't compare to the city students. But the difference is still incomprehensible. Apparently, Shi is the most outstanding person he has met in the city. The kid smiled at Kai's look and said that if that was it, he'd be the first to leave. He stammered, desperation in his eyes. "Stop! That's not right at all!" However, the guy left, and the guy asked the judge how that was possible. It's still a month away from graduation. How did he graduate? But it was explained to him that it was only for combat specialties. But for others, graduation is held earlier, because you have to complete an internship. Chen Kai's eyes widened. So this Shi isn't even a martial arts major. The manager asked if his pet needed medical attention, and they placed bets because you have to remember to pay the double arena service charge. Jen decided that he would go to the infirmary first. If he was going to pay anyway, it was a sin not to take advantage of the opportunity. In the lobby, meanwhile, Shi learned that it was impossible to fight an opponent levels above. The girl behind the counter said that not everyone would want to fight a weak opponent. She also offered to call some acquaintance that would agree to a battle, and they would provide an arena. Except the biggest problem was that he had no acquaintances. Shi is a strong introvert, so other than his friendship with animals, he has no one. Toth thanked the girl and said he would go to the association in that case. The Beast Lords Association can give quests and afterwards reward you for completing them. She carefully selects tasks for the trainee Beast Lords. In some ways, the tasks are even designed to train the Lord's abilities. They can be compared to the field training sessions conducted by the Association for Trainees at 3-month intervals. For Shi experience didn't particularly matter, but he hoped that there would be quite a few capable lords in his city. The quests for supernatural level beast lords are mostly focused on training the lord and the pet itself. The main point is to provide a training ground. At the same time, if you send the 11th to carry bricks, they will earn more. Only now the priority is not money, but finding a suitable opponent for training. But even if you don't find one, you can look for other assignments that will do. Considering all the physical and psychological factors, one should not limit their workout space to their home. If you do the same thing every day, you'll go crazy. After that battle, it was obvious how happy 11 was. Finally given a mission, to catch stray cats. There is a large thieving group of stray cats in their neighborhood that needs to be caught. Shi was astonished. Cats could still form some kind of groupings? Although considering they're supernatural beings with intelligence, it's possible. It's a pretty good mission, except that 11 can't fly. That's very unfortunate. Shi kept picking and choosing missions, but only 1-star missions popped up. The machine had already stopped giving out anything. Then the young man just despaired. What should he do? All jobs are posted by people who want to hire Beastmaster for a low price for some work. Like locusts, it is a supernatural animal, a popular delicacy and pest. The only drawback is the speed of completion. However, there is no time limit on this mission, but obviously they need constant deliveries. The task seems fitting, but without the ability to fly, it will be difficult. Oh, and the locust's racial skill is Windwing. Before the ice beast attacks, the only option is to reinforce the body with armor. But facing a fast and agile opponent, speed and vision will not be enough. The panda's explosive power coupled with supervision can determine the exact location, then that would be a plus. Missions like this can be used as an alternative to training. And the mission to catch rodents seems like a good one. The mouse is a low-level creature, good at hiding underground. It has no more combat power when awakened than a dog. But the main problem is that they breed quickly and move around in droves. Fortunately, when faced with a threat, they flee. Otherwise, they'd be much more dangerous. There are not so many mice in cities, unlike in rural areas. It is difficult to evict them from there. Killing mice is definitely not easier than killing locusts. But either way, this mission can be used. 11th's reaction speed should increase, and in the meantime, you can postpone hardening training. Experienced is enough. Shiyu picked up the ticket with his task and turned around and noticed his past opponent. The kid walked over and said hello to him, asking if the ice beast had recovered. Chen Kai was slightly tense, but replied that yes, he had. So he had also come for errands? Kai answered in the affirmative and asked what kind of assignment the young man had taken. Shiyu replied that he would get rid of marmots, or rather earth mice. Chen Kai said that it would be smarter to form a team for such a task. He offered to be on a team together. A guy can take that mission too. Shiyu was a little shocked. They didn't seem to be fighting, and he didn't run him around. What happened? Kai suggested getting 2 more people to supervise the process. It would be more efficient. Sha, meanwhile, was pouring cold sweat. He didn't think he would do it alone, did he? A few mice really don't pose a threat, but a dozen or even 100 is a problem. In the end, Shiyu agreed, saying that in that case, they would complete the task together. Chen Kai rambled with assertiveness that he would then contact 2 classmates and they would have a team. Actually, the guy just wants to know more about his training. How did this guy turn a lazy panda into a fighter? Toward the end of the day, Shiyu once again looked into a store called White Lotus. He was met by the same salesman. He was surprised, for this was the 3rd time in 2 weeks. The guy sadly said that the fights are getting bigger and bigger, and his health has been very poor since he was a kid. The man behind the counter handed him several boxes. These are the supplements he needs. Looking at the young man in front of him, the salesman wondered if he should quit. Word would get out sooner or later. Shiyu's house was a mess. They returned close to nightfall completely tired. 11th and the Beast Lord pounced on the prepared food like true wild beasts. And when their meal was over, the young man said it was time to learn a new skill. The panda was just tired, however his master had thought of something again. Strength depended on effort, but why couldn't he say anything? After a couple seconds, Shu gave the pet a new ultrasmithing skill that could be activated by spending spiritual power. 11's visual acuity would increase several times. He would be able to see even at night. When the panda learned the skill, huge rays of light came from his eyes that blinded the Lord. And 11th, rubbing his eyes, went out onto the porch to check his vision. That was really cool because he saw everything just fine. Now it will be much more convenient to train at night and will compensate for the lack of diligence in training. Shiyu, on the other hand, would only be able to start recovering his spiritual strength tomorrow morning. He hopes 11 doesn't smash the steel plate in the night. He needs a good night's sleep. And with renewed vigor, he can catch more earth mice tomorrow. That's great. Meanwhile, Chen Kai was sitting at the computer in his cottage, sipping tea. In the class chat group, he suggested to his classmates that they go out tomorrow to catch mice. Suddenly, Juayue wrote to him in private messages, saying that she saw him in the arena yesterday. During another sip of tea, Chen Kai choked up, almost spilling on the computer keyboard. He quickly and nervously began typing a message, asking what she saw there. The girl, on the other hand, responded with only one message. She had seen everything she needed to see. That's when Kai became desperate. If she saw it, then all the girls in the group would know too. In the end, they agreed that Juayue would take her friend to catch mice, and they would meet Shiyu together. The next day, the boys met first, standing outside the huge warehouses. Shiyu looked rather wrinkled, seemingly not even having had a good night's sleep. However, the latter said that it didn't matter. Even though 11 was on his best behavior last night, the results of the training were high. The one asked where Chen's acquaintances were, and he replied that those should be coming soon. There were voices from behind, and the boys turned around. 2 girls were staring at them. Chen Kai introduced them. The one with pink hair was his classmate Zhuang Yue. And next to her friend, the experimental school's beast lord, Bai Jingjing. Shiyu awkwardly said hello, smiling slightly and raising his hand upwards. The girls also said hello, calling him master. This made Shu feel even worse. Chen explained that those had seen their battle yesterday as they passed by the arena. Now they should introduce their pets. Chen Kai was the first, telling the biography of the ice beast. The second was Zhuang's pet, a level 6 panda that possessed an entry-level solidification skill. Pet Jingjing is a level 6 training beast that has the binding skill. And the last one was Shiyu's pet, a level 5 panda that possessed a profound level solidification skill. Chen and even the girls simultaneously said that the young man's words were complete nonsense. Shi only smiled at that, thinking to himself that they would regret their words. One day they would realize what 11th was capable of. They didn't stay long on the subject. They had to check in and move out at 8 o'clock. After a while, a team of 4 filled out all the forms and boarded the bus. There, Chen brought up one topic, asking what was his specialty. Why isn't it fighting? Zhuang didn't understand how a non-professional could have such a strong pet, but her thoughts were interrupted. It turned out that Shi Yu was studying to specialize in animal cultivation. Battles are for brutes, and cultivation skills can't be mastered by everyone. That was the end of the topic. They finally arrived at the farm where they were to destroy the rodents. They were each given a backpack. The sky was clear and the sun was scorching her skin so hot she could have burned in a couple minutes. They were left at the site to distribute the work and get started. There was a lot of work to do. But just looking at all of this, no one realized where they were even starting from. Shi Yu suggested to summon the pets first, and then think about it later. He thought that in such an environment, the skill of ultrasonics would come in handy. Finally, those called for their animals. Jing Jing summoned a training beast and Chen an ice beast. Shi Yu and Zhuang Yue, on the other hand, called for pandas. The 11th was many times smaller than the girl's panda. The big panda looked at the little one strangely. He looked full of energy, while the big one didn't. Zhuang asked, "Is he also taking steel bamboo as the basis of his panda food? His pet looks healthy." She cut herself short in mid-thought, shrieking, "Isn't she a disciple of the bamboo and stone martial arts court?" He replied in the negative. Steel bamboo is the basis of panda cultivation. The martial arts palace is the training ground for the lords who train pandas. The manager of the martial arts palace is a high-level beast lord who breeds pandas. His pandas are incredibly strong. Zhuang Yue thought that he was a disciple of this center, but apparently she was mistaken. In Pinchang, the coolest one right now is Lord Lin. Disciples, experts, and masters are also divided into 3 levels: beginner, intermediate, and high. Jing Jing said she doesn't know if he is the coolest or not, but here is his daughter. She is the youngest lord. At the age of 18, she was able to advance to the rank of specialist, and she entered one of the top 9 schools. Jin Jin didn't know further, so Zhuang continued. That girl had chosen a cultivation specialty, and now she had gone back. Lin Shuzhu told her that she chose the major because she wants to find out if pandas can evolve even more. Manager Lin had spent his whole life raising them, but he never figured it out. Surely there are no lazy pandas either. Yeah, and besides, even if they find something, it's definitely not relevant to them. Suddenly, little 11 noticed something. Shi Yu said to stop talking. He found a mouse! He and his little one pointed straight ahead to one of the bushes in the bed. 11 was pleased with himself. Chen said, judging by its size, "It's on the 4th level and all alone. It's not dangerous. We need to destroy this pest before she notices them and escapes." The books say that such mice have good vigilance. If there are pandas or ice animals nearby, she will see them, but not her trainer. He camouflaged himself with a plant and approached the mouse, catching it by its small paws. Except she immediately lashed out as soon as she noticed something amiss and deftly escaped. Chen then barely had time to react and commanded the ice beast to stop the mouse. But even here the shrew was able to escape, skillfully leaping into the air and leaping over the beast. With her tail, the red baby held her treat, happy that she had escaped death. Except that suddenly a shadow appeared above her, the air heavier. She went cold. Something very strong came over her. There was blue energy all around. And sure enough, 11 fell right on top of the mouse, crushing it with his weight. He looked at her like he was ready to straighten out her red ponytail right now. Then the other pets joined in, actively binding the mouse with their spikes and scaring it with their appearance. Then 11th finally covered his eyes slightly, resting and proud of himself. The 3 teenagers thought the same thing. The strength of this panda is high. It's like some kind of high-rise structure. In the end, they came up to give the rat away. Everything was a boon to Shi Yu. If it wasn't for his panda, everything would have failed. They had underestimated the agility of mice. Trainer Ching Ching is a hunter by nature, but even she didn't catch the rodent the first time. Chen Kai and Zhuang Yue gave the young man a thumbs up, approving the work. The reward for 1 mouse is 10 yuan. If 100 are destroyed, Shi Yu can pay for 11's food and stay afloat. He suggested that the team split up and go one at a time. It would be much faster. Chen Kai picked up on the idea, suggesting that they then meet back here at noon, where they were currently standing. If they encounter 1 mouse, they can deal with it as they wish. But if they encounter a whole flock, they will have to call them all together. Everyone accepted the fact that it would be more efficient and split up. Zhuang and Jingjing went off to one side and the guys went to the other. Zhuang somehow feels like her panda and Shi's panda are different animals altogether. Shi Yu had already mentally set them a target, and it's 20 mice before lunch. Except that 11 was ready to catch at least 200 and seemed to be realistically planning to do so. The Lord said he didn't care. The main thing is not to spoil the crops and fruit trees. Otherwise, they won't earn anything, and they will also have to pay compensation. Those are not rich enough to give that much. Shi Yu thought that right now, his little guy was willing to even become bent. The trees would definitely not be able to withstand him, even though he assured that he would be careful. But anyway, the guy said any reward they gave him would be spent on food. The panda started running from bush to bush, from slide to slide, catching one mouse at a time. The panda was enthusiastic and did not understand why the Lord would not teach him the power of invisibility. Only he replied that the 11th himself had said that powers were obtained by hard work. Now is not the time to teach that skill. He can't learn it. Better to leave room for other powers. The farmer, meanwhile, was recording the number of mice in his notebook, asking to be a little slower. When all the teenagers had already returned, they were perplexed. 2 hours had passed and his panda was still catching mice. But Shu explained that his panda, besides eating, also likes practicing. However, it is a vacation when compared to past practices. Looking at the farmer's notes, Chen saw how much 11 had accumulated in 2 hours. He stared at Shay. Wasn't he sick this morning? Okay, Panda, but how did he have so much strength? The young man showed his partner a grain of gold, or rather a pill, after which he popped it in his mouth. The teenagers didn't understand what this stuff was. Some kind of tonic? At that moment, Chen Kai realized that even though others might have better abilities, Shi's dedication was the strongest. Shi Yu then asked, "How many mice have they caught?" He counted about 22 after all. When Zhuang's friends called out their numbers, which came to almost 10, she became desperate. Her panda had only caught 2 mice. She called the pandas stupid, and then 11 got angry, telling her not to put everyone in the same mold. Of course, only Shu heard this, but the farmer beat him to it, saying it was better not to say that. The young man's panda is very useful. Meanwhile, the guy got the food out, suggesting that everyone grab a bite to eat and rest a bit. While they all sat down on the ground and opened their food boxes, 11 was still working. Juan Yue asked, "Doesn't Panda Shu need to rest? It's not normal after all." But Shi Yu said that without such labor, she wouldn't have mastered the solidification skills at a profound level. All 3 teens agreed with the guy at the same time. He was saying all the right things. Chen shrieked. He now knew why the city lords had such a high test passing rate. Is everyone there studying so hard? When Kai asked how Shu had managed to discipline the panda so well, he cut off the continuation of his monologue, asking why he was exaggerating. No one wanted to take 11th away from the base, and only he along with Lin Shuju saw his potential. He was confident in his choice, and by happy coincidence, he and the 11 had developed an unusual bond. Chen Kai didn't understand how there was no exaggeration here. After all, such diligence was commendable, and it was possible to reach extraordinary heights with it. Now he decided that he would practice with the same persistence. In time, Jingjing also joined in. In his thoughts, Chen admitted that he didn't believe that he would succeed, but if he learned such a secret, he should try it on himself. Shi Yu only observed this. Since they really wanted to try so hard, he just wished them good luck. And by the way, will he be participating in the Overlord certification? I mean, his specialty is cultivation. Will he be taking the mentor exam? Sha hesitated a bit, replying that although his specialty was cultivation, he wanted to pass for a warrior. If he became a cultivation mentor, he would definitely make money. But if someone found out about his abilities, it would be the end. In this state, laws are supreme, but cultivation mentors and ordinary people are very different in status. Until he is able to defend himself, then he cannot squander his talent for learning. Before dealing with stronger skills, Shuk decided to take the Lord certification. Then, maybe he would earn more trust. Chen said, "Mal, who knows, maybe next time they'll all be together." Shu Yu's panda is currently at level 5, and his ice beast is at level 6. These levels are too low for grading. In order to pass the first round of certification, it is necessary for pets to have unprecedented combat abilities. It will be difficult to reach level 10 during this time. Shi Yu said that if he didn't pass the certification this time, they could pass it together next time. Chen Kai was surprised. Wasn't his pet at the 5th level? It was unlikely that they would be able to reach the 10th in half a year. From the level of awakening to the level of excellence is something that many people fail to go through. The transition between mediocre and superior, however, depends entirely on whether the pet manages to cross the threshold. She said that he didn't care about the difficulties. Going to the 10th level of awakening would definitely not be a problem. And even if they don't advance to the superior level, the awakening levels can also be attended to. I think the others have figured it out. If they can't make it with the panda, they'll take a detour. Chen knew that skipping over them wouldn't be difficult. He had definitely lost, for Shi Yu was thinking much further ahead. When they come back, that one will increase the intensity of the load and training of the ice panzer twice as much. Suddenly, a strange sound echoed throughout the village. The teenagers almost jumped up while the farmer was shocked. The loudspeaker announced that it was a warning signal of approaching wild animals. A whole flock has already gathered behind the wall, and their numbers are increasing. After this news, many farmers started actively fleeing from the fields. All departments were told to make preparations as directed. The teenagers were also terrified. Cold sweat began to drip down the farmer's face. It was still a very bad case. He said that the situation was dangerous and they had better go home now. But Chen didn't understand. What was this announcement? The one said he didn't quite understand it himself. It seems that the animals from the snowy mountains are not happy. This signal is serious, and if the situation is very dangerous, they will have to leave here. Shay knew it wasn't the time to panic. Unlike 10 years ago, the area now had a few villages and a high wall around it. In the city district, there is an army from the Beastmaster Association. They are the main force that opposes the movement of beasts. If it was true that there was a chance of the beasts breaking through the wall, then it would be much more serious than the usual warning. Chen suggested that they go and have a look. Zhuang immediately asked incomprehensively, "What's that for? There must be fencing tapes hanging there." Shi Yu, on the other hand, said that it was better to go back. Later they might come back again, but right now it was better to go to the Lord Association and ask what the signal meant. And near sunset, the teens returned to the association, asking what it all meant, but the young man behind the counter said he didn't know. It's not the first time this has happened, only now the alarm is yellow instead of blue. Suddenly, the two teenagers were called out by a man. It was Teacher Zhang, but what was he doing here? He said he was in the neighborhood and saw the chat room. He wanted to come and watch. Shay didn't understand how you can chat in a chat room where there is a teacher. Isn't it better to create a general correspondence without one? Teacher Zhang politely asked who it was they had decided to keep company with, and Chen explained that they were friends from other schools. The teacher nodded. So they're all confused because of that warning? The disciples immediately pelted Zhang with questions. Could the same thing happen as before? He suggested finding a quieter place to talk. Shou was already thinking of a plan of action. If things were really that dangerous, it was better to go to the urban area together with the 11th. The teacher said that things haven't been the same for a long time. The territory of the mountains is protected. It's been many years since that situation. If anything, you can call in lords from other cities. Is it possible that something could still happen? The teacher replied that it was only a flock of beasts now. Shi Yu said that the reason is because those beasts are not ice element animals. The territory of the urban area is better for them. The books say that competition for food and resources is the main reason for the beast's obsession. However, it must not be the main one for coming down from the mountains. After all, the beast obsession has been repeated more than once, but not as suddenly as before. But what exactly made the animals go to the conflict is unknown. We can assume that they have the answer, and it lies in the Ice City. When it comes to the history of the city, although it's not even really history because everything is unproven, just speculation. According to research 2,000 years ago, there were no snowy mountains anywhere around Ice City, just the territory of the beasts. In time, an ice dragon came from faraway lands and fell into the mountains. The dragon was very strong and just started dwelling in that area. He froze the entire area, and then the beast lords decided to banish him by creating an army. A long war with the beast began. That's when the snow mountains were formed. It was probably the tribe of the lords that won. There are the remains of a dragon on the mountain. Rumor has it its bones are sealed inside, as the beast lords have walled them up. The dragon is long dead, of course, but there is speculation that the sealed dragon turned into a spirit that calls the beasts down to the city. The teenagers were terrified after the information about the dragon ghost. Jingjing was scared, and the others felt stupid. The teacher said that no one had ever seen it, and that this was what the archaeologists had found. The stone giant was said to be the totem of the people. Shi Yu asked, wasn't it with his help that the ancient lords fought the dragon? Suddenly Shu heard a strange voice saying that it wasn't, but no one from the company spoke. The voice spoke again, saying it wasn't like that. Maybe it's a stone statue. Is the kid crazy and hearing voices in his head? It's worth getting checked out. A statue can't show signs of life. But if it wasn't just a statue, no one would have put it there. The young man heard the voice again, but he was pulled back by Jinjin asking if everything was normal, except the man only waved it away, saying he just liked the statue. No one from them seemed to hear or notice anything. It was weird. Shiyu feels like a statue is talking to him. Or rather, it's trying to talk to him. Could it be a statue of a giant that ancient people made, and it gained spirit? Although, if she had been reborn, the other lords would have noticed long ago. There are so many people walking around here. Teacher John said that it was better to end it there. He had other things to do, so they would see each other again. But don't worry, the beast's obsession won't happen again. Even if the dragon comes back to life, the lords can handle it. Finally, the man left. The teenagers turned to each other, and Chen asked if they would go on to catch mice. Except Shiyu said that he had a couple things to do right now, so he wouldn't go. Troika didn't realize what kind of business this could be. Why don't they eat first? Except that the young man ran away, saying that it was urgent. Chen Kai looked at him disappointedly. He didn't even give his number. Eventually, the young man ran to some museum that had a library to familiarize himself with the statue. The history of this world, it seems, can be divided into as many as 3 eras. That's enough. The era of myths, totems, and the third of beast lords. In the first era, there were mimic creatures that ruled the world. Then, in the age of totems, there were already people who tried to survive in territories where stronger beings ruled. And in the age of lords, people began to tame animals. The third epoch can be divided into ancient and modern periods. The history of this world is divided into 3 phases, but even so there are many gaps in it. No one knows where the first creatures of the Mythos era are, and the history of the Ice City has yet to be fully explored. She was never able to find what he was chasing after. In his previous life as an archaeologist, he had found some mythical system. Then he started studying mythology and went to ancient ruins with a teacher. Over time, this became an everyday occurrence. Then the guy went headfirst into research and disaster struck. A mountain massif collapsed on him and buried him alive. And then he was transported to Shu's body. Why didn't he just read Manhwa and games in that life? And why did you even need this dig, and why go to dangerous places? Now he's reborn in a dangerous world, and his only wish is to return home. But now he can live his life to his heart's content. Hati, in the history of this world, almost everything is incomprehensible. But Shiyu has a system. He won't set foot on the old path. Finally, he left the library, left the archives, and appeared outside where it was already dusk. The huge stone statue stood where it had stood a couple hours ago, surrounded by green foliage. In the end, Shiyu couldn't overpower himself and tried to talk to the statue. Shiyu tried for several minutes to get the statue to talk to him in any way. However, everything was clear, so he decided to say, "Since you don't want to talk, I'm leaving." Teacher Zhang's story was very interesting, even though it only consists of assumptions. Except, what is the story really like? Shay decided that he definitely wanted to know everything. Abruptly turning around to face the statue, he hoped he would be told everything. Toth tried to make contact, telling the statue to tell him if he could find out the truth. At the same second, the monument began to shake violently, its eyes glittering dangerously. My head was starting to split, as if someone had just hit it right on top of her. The stone shattered completely, leaving a strange purple glow in its place. Then a dark cloud of dust descended on Shiyu. He didn't realize what had happened. However, it all quickly dissipated. That's when it was time to go into utter terror. What did he do? He just completely ruined the main monument of this street. After that, a strange lightning bolt struck right at the same point, causing the entire city to shake. Shiyu cried out. What on earth had he done? What a fool. His specialty was very dangerous. Even much more dangerous than some beast lord. At the same time, the people of the town were in shock. Was it the beasts that attacked the town? Where's the news then? One kid tried to calm his friend down. It's definitely the social anxiety that's doing it. Elsewhere, a couple of the city's top bigwigs were also chatting about the sudden earthquake. The other regions of the association also felt something. But the chairman said he didn't know. But maybe it's not as bad as everyone thinks. Meanwhile, Shiyu had already rushed to his house, and as fast as possible. He bought the pet some yummy treats and told it to eat to grow up faster. After all, the world is such a scary place. Also, may he grow stronger to protect not only himself, but him as well. In his mind, the young man was freaking out. His tongue is his own enemy. Why did he have to talk to a stone statue? For now, he doesn't know what even happened, and so it's best to stay home. Except for the store and the pharmacy, you definitely shouldn't go anywhere else. Suddenly, seeing the silkworm, he added some more food to his portion. The silkworm even wrinkled his nose. Just let him eat. Also, yesterday they didn't have time to solidify the ultravision skill, and today the hype started. In the backyard of the small cottage, Shiyu and 11th were once again practicing. Now the panda's stats were more or less normal, though those hadn't yet learned intimidation or absolute sleep skills. But they'll wait. Right now the most important thing is to get the skills to a trained level. Also, today is the time to train not only pandas, but also silkworms. In the first task, silkworm threads were used to shoot a t-shirt. However, it has not been possible to pierce it yet. But the speed is good, so later Shay combined the silkworm training with the 11th. It will be hard to evade his arrows, because the smaller the area, the stronger the effect. The pets had practiced well together, so encouraged, the Lord withdrew for food. As he passed the bus stop, the young man heard 2 young men talking about the temporary closure of the association due to the incident. Surely everyone must have noticed the ruined statue long ago. No one will find him, will they? No one was there at the time, and they just don't put cameras in this world. Until he figures out what's even going on, he's certainly not going to admit he's guilty. At the spot where the lightning struck, a strange portal to the unknown opened up. People from the association have gathered around. They consider it an ancient space. Dr. Liu was asked for his opinion. He tried to solve the mystery of the dragon, but nothing came out. There's too little information. Maybe in this situation they'll be able to find out more. Anyway, did anything weird happen yesterday? The chairman said a chamber statue of a giant in their garden had crashed. Dr. Liu said that the space must have appeared for a reason. Someone had disturbed the scar of history. Apparently some gifted person has reappeared to hear the whispers of history. But who? After 4 days, 11 had mastered healing and ultravision at an experienced level. Solidification had also reached a new level. Shiyu wants to see if his panda can defeat a strong opponent while at rank 5. Coming again to the pharmacy White Jasmine, the man behind the cash register said, "Will you stop? He shops so often, it's frightening." Although he heard the day before yesterday that a student at a drugstore down south bought a few cases. Even crazier than him. Shiyu remembered Chen's zeal to become successful. Could it really be him? The salesman exhaled heavily, asking, "Is this what's wrong with students?" Here she decided to change the topic, asking why the Beast Lords Association was closed. The man behind the counter smiled, saying that the young man had come to the right place. Perhaps their town would go up in flames. Shiyu looked at the person across from him with interest and asked for details. The man whispered something about a secret space. Shiyu was perplexed. Why is he being bullshitted about some space? But the salesman went on to say that it was some sort of space outside their world, like secret. This interested the young man. Almost a week had passed, and here was the information. The man said that there was a theory that their universe would die. However, after the death of a few powerful lords, their space could still be protected. A separate space is made of the Lord's consciousness, but then it cannot be controlled. Any living being can enter it. She listened to the end. So the space was created from a strong ancient lord of legendary level. The man nodded, saying that if it was true, there were a lot of rare resources and even pets. The young man looked skeptically at his companion. There could be monsters in there. He was told that there was definitely no need to worry about it. After that, Shiyu walked out, thinking that there was nothing wrong with the statue collapsing. Speaking of which, come to think of it, maybe there's some information about the dragon in space? Sitting down on the threshold, the boy exhaled. It was better not to go in there, though, just in case. Space seems dangerous, though the statue answered him. Could he break his word? Suddenly, when the student hadn't even left the threshold, someone knocked loudly. It turned out to be public assistance. Shiyu smiled, happy that those people had finally found out about him. He had been orphaned. However, he wasn't even given a couple of seconds as they started yelling that they were about to kick down the door as they thought the house was uninhabited. The Lord's pets turned their startled gaze to the door. My first thought was bewilderment and then horror. The horses had found out about the statue. A chai search, yes, the same as fortune-telling or looking at the past. That's how they figured it out. A girl with a demonic wind lion stood on the doorstep. This slightly surprised Shiyu. The woman introduced herself as Lu Kunyi, a doctoral student in archaeology and a member of the Archaeological Research Association. The announcement that she was a doctor of archaeology put the young man into an even greater stupor. Seems like a nice girl, if a little duplicitous. Why did she go into archaeology? The lad introduced himself somewhat languidly, saying he'd like to be a beast lord and led the woman inside. Walking into the courtyard, she immediately asked if he had anything to do with the statue. After all, the statue was destroyed near the Lords Association. Dr. Lu doesn't wish him harm. He just wants to know if he's heard any strange voices coming from the statue. The boy didn't answer, but only asked what it meant. So the statue is alive? Shiyu explained that none of this was true. He has the gift of telepathy, but voices can often be confused with those of the living. Some inanimate objects that have come into contact with the senses many times can acquire a soul. It is a trace that only those gifted with telepathy can hear. This is why they are called hearing the voice of history. Shay asked, "Does that mean he's special?" Dr. Lu said, "Hearing the voice of history is a very special gift. It happens rarely, or rather a few times in history. Countless facts have been lost, but the traces of history allow us to know the facts. Hearing the voice of history is easier for those who hear the voice of history to find a way to overcome the defenses. If you touch the soul of the statue, you can trigger the appearance of antiquity." Shiyu was shown some kind of picture of the space. He guessed why they came to see him, but the thought was finished for him. That one is a born archaeologist, so the woman wants to invite him to join the team. Hearing the words that he was a born grinder, Shiyu was completely shocked. That's just not possible. He can't work as an archaeologist in this life. Make money, raise a panda, and find a beautiful girl, then get a kitty. That's his dream. Lad tried to say as gently as possible that he wasn't interested in the job. He doesn't want to join the association. The woman asked, who told him she was inviting the association specifically? With talent like that, it's a waste of time. There are only 11 people in the entire state who hear the voice of history, and very few strong ones at that. Does he know what that means? Dr. Lu invites him to join another group. Shi's talent means he likes this area, otherwise he wouldn't hear his voice. The young man pondered over the information he had received. People like him were even more rare than legendary-level lords at the totem level. However, why 11 in particular? Did it have something to do with his baby panda? Well, if he's cordially invited, how can he refuse? Shiyu asked where and under what conditions he would be invited to. He was told that he couldn't find better conditions than theirs. If a guy became a member of this group, his position in society would be above legendary-level beast lords. And if he wanted to explore antiquities, he could use the resources too. Legendary level lords will be his bodyguards. Shi Yu was simply thrilled not only with the conditions, but also with the opportunity to do archaeology. Apparently all this will only work to his advantage. Great plot. An archaeologist who died in his past life will succeed in his new one. He's going to be a member of a very cool group. I can't wait to get started already. And Shay isn't even worthy of the level of a specialist. Snapping out of the web of his thoughts and asking what his responsibilities would be. And I think he's been told there will be almost none. You just have to make your own decisions. There's no pressure. Dr. Liu wondered if people like him could live a life of idleness. As soon as new information comes out of the story, people like him are put on the case. Shi Yu's eyes lit up. So he would be able to make decisions. He wouldn't have to risk his life and travel anywhere. He really thought it was such an easy way to make money, so he didn't go into great detail. He was interested in the name of the band. The woman said it's the Bureau of Historic Sites, called the 11th Bureau. It includes special people in the field of archaeology. And once again he will be followed by the number 11. Should he join? He asked many questions, and since he would join, he would be protected. After thinking for a bit, Shi Yu put his thumb up and said that he was joining. And anyway, Dr. Liu is on the team with him, right? She replied that he was. There are 11 of them with him. The young man studiously ignored another of the same number. He was distracted by the doctor welcoming him to the group. He shook the woman's hand with a smile, glad to have a place in this bureau. Still, Shi Yu realized late that he would be a reserve. He would have to be certified first before he could become an official member of the bureau. Dr. Liu said he's too weak right now. They can only give him 9,000 for initial expenses. The first task is to reach the level of a specialist. Next, you need to acquire knowledge about archaeological research. The young man was very excited, saying that he would do everything. The main thing for him is to get the money, because with it he can feed the Silkworm and the Panda. The woman says he'll get the money tomorrow. But she advised him not to tell anyone that he was a member of the 11th Bureau. He could be detected by foreign intelligence, and if anything, only their bureau knows his connection to the statue. When Shay becomes an official member of the group, she will be his point of contact between him and the group. The young man kept thinking about the fact that apparently there are many people who want to unravel the mysteries of the historical trail. That's when Liu suddenly said that his main assignment for certification was to find out the truth about the history of Binyuan City. Even if the one who can hear the voice of history can't hear everything, there needs to be some kind of impetus. And he's eager to learn the truth about the city even more than she is, so the assignment is very fitting. As expected, Shi Yu's eyes lit up. So he would have to make contact with that space. Ta said he has the right mindset. He can go in. But what to do next is his certification. She also wants to give him a gift. The woman gave 3 to choose from. A special vet for panda skills, a development technique for silkworms, a foundry pet of high origin. That panda is his pet, isn't it? And the green silkworm is extra. There's probably no contact with it, which means it's wild. Shi has grown it pretty well, threads at a good level and with non-proton development. No wonder he graduated with a specialty in cultivation. The young man was shocked. He was already happy about the money, and there were other gifts. Yu looked at the panda. Without labor and no reward, is it good to take it all in? Although since he accepted 10 million, he could basically get a skill. The technique for developing silkworms is a good one. He didn't want to let it go, but apparently it was already time. And yet its threads have never even been sold once. Although if the silkworm can get stronger, it will do some good. He asked if he was sure he had to pick one thing and was asked back, does Shay want to get everything? The young man said he wanted to benefit the archaeologists and become strong. Such insolence astonished the woman. Dr. Liu hummed unhappily and said they would consider it a prepayment. Right now, he could contract a high pet cub, so he would have to wait until he became a high-level lord. Right now, he can only contract with 1 pet, but when the will be an entry-level lord, then there will be 2. But to contract a pet of high origin, this is not enough. It will not be possible to maintain the rapid growth of the pet. Shi Yu realized that the woman was right. He was unable to pull another pet on himself. The doctor said she would recommend the guy at the Bamboo and Stone Palace. Now Shi Yu has a great mentor and can borrow. A sound curriculum is much better than copying. Here Dr. Liu added, asking if he would raise a silkworm to a crystal butterfly. The guy said he wasn't planning anything like that at all. He just wanted to try growing green silkworms. The woman thought they really are very flexible pets after all. They can even evolve in many different species. Almost all scientists that are engaged in the study of the development of pets take the silkworm as their first object. Sun-Yi won't talk about the supernatural level. She knows 3 ways to raise it. And when the silkworm grows up, its strength can surpass even a panda. The young man was interested in the methods. Dr. Liu said that they are divided at the level of a lower, middle, and higher-ranked commander. The conditions also vary by level. The first is an ice sailing ship of the lowest rank commander level. the properties of wind and ice elements, and the strongest skill is creating a blizzard. Next is a butterfly demon, mid-rank commander level, belongs to the element of darkness, strong and cursed in surprise attacks. The latter is a butterfly fairy of light, a top-rank level, element of light. She is able to control light and is very good at magic. In addition, raw materials and feed to grow these species before the silkworm enters the cocoon stage. Its ability to weave threads must reach the proficient level, but it's hard to train him to that level. It's not worth forcing him because longevity and talent have a limit, Shay realized. So for a silkworm to evolve into 3 saws, besides materials, it needs an experience level. It seemed to him that a perfect level was necessary for that. But if it is difficult for a silkworm to reach even a perfect level, how difficult is it to reach a perfect level? Shiyu asked if it was even possible for a silkworm to get to that level, and Dr. Liu said that anything was possible. She told briefly the 2 main ways. There was a case of success in their country, too. A silkworm reached the level of a ruler by race. Lu Kuni said, "Don't be so greedy. The silkworm doesn't need to improve the quality of the threads. It will improve itself with a higher level. Unless he could provide food for 100%, would give him a guarantee that his skills would crack the cocoon by 100. Except that even the most experienced craftsman can't give an accurate guarantee." The young man seemed to understand. The key points are the level of threads, cocoon breaking strength, and silkworm potential. It is necessary to awaken the silkworm's skill to release from the cocoon. For it to develop, Shiyu must provide suitable raw materials. If that is the mechanism for silkworm development, then maybe it can go the old way. Maybe a skill could be given through the pre-cocoon training panel. In that case, you can go the traditional way. He will get the skill and break the cocoon later. He will definitely be able to do it if the skill level is high. The young man shouted out that he was choosing to evolve to a butterfly light. Deep down, he knew he couldn't master it, but it was better to choose this rare species. The doctor exhaled. He'd chosen the highest rank, but she'd told him the difficulty varied. Lu Kunyi said that wasting valuable raw materials is nothing, but if the pet can't get out of the cocoon, it will suffocate. She gave him a detailed guide to silkworm development. He should think twice before proceeding. Requirements for the butterfly fairy light requires a minimum of an experienced yarn weaving rank. Immature heart of light. Ripe sunflower petals are required from the raw materials. Luminescent seed, glowing mushrooms, daylight stone powder, and ripe glowing grass. Then following the recipe, mix all the ingredients to create a cocoon, and after 30 days, the skill of rainbow light should awaken in the cocoon. The cocoon will collapse, and a fairy butterfly of light will emerge from it. Lastly, Lu told the young man to just give it a try. He remembered those words and thought about how it wasn't easy. In Shiyu's mind, all the information just blended into one mess. Judging by the names of the raw materials, it's going to cost a lot of money. It would probably cost about 10,000. Apparently, they will have to find another way to develop because this one is too expensive. After transcribing everything from the woman's cell phone, he returned it to her hands. She smiled calmly and said that she would be on her way. Shaw was able to develop the pets quite well. As he saw Lu off with a glance, the boy didn't know if joining the 11th Bureau would be a good thing. Although he didn't want to return to his former profession, but if he wasn't born for it, he wouldn't have heard the voice of the statue. But enough about that. Tomorrow he'll have the money and today he can squander the rest. That's why Shiyu decided to go out and buy himself a brand new phone. He was greeted by a counselor. The young man said he would like a phone for himself. He described features along the lines of internet access, an energy metering function, and a pet guide. Shu provided a new model that detects position within a radius of 30 meters. It also has the function of detecting supernatural level and below. It costs 10 grand. A little different from the phones from the minor past world, but the functions are different. Shiyu decided to try out the phone by pointing the camera at the dog. Eventually, the phone did recognize the dog and gave out the information. His name was Mechanical Dog, gave away even the element and a brief description. The functionality is top-notch, but if he wants to copy that, there's no bug. Okay, either way, 11th and Silkworm won't be able to use this skill. The phone can detect not only energy fluctuations, but also the level of development of the Mechanical Dog. Level 10 is pretty high, a little more and it'll be supernatural. He likes the handbook. With this phone, not only can he get an unknown beast, but he can get information about it. Great phone, but it's too expensive. Nowadays, if you buy one, there's nothing left. Shiyu raised his hand up, confidently saying that he was taking the cell phone. The purchase of the phone was a success, especially considering all of its usefulness. Shiyu went to the pet store. 11's bamboo seemed to be enough for a month, but with his love of eating, he needed to find something better. Taking advantage of the upgrade, he scanned the raw materials on the counter. Steelwood, which was like a plant with stuffing, belongs to the element of wood and gold, enhances the panda's hardening abilities and can awaken vitality. They can be overfed, But 11 spends a lot of energy, so nothing bad will happen. Silkworms have enough to eat, so there's no reason to buy them now. Suddenly the young man saw a tonic on the shelves. Eventually the purchase of the remedy was cancelled. He still had the pills, so there was nothing to spend. After arriving home, Shiyu rested. He finally had a chance to read the news of the Beast Lords Association. This time you don't have to go and find out. You can just open your smartphone. However, once the news loaded on the app, the guy was a bit shocked. A short announcement popped up on the screen, saying something about the other side and the ability to take anything from there. Shiyu was simply astonished. Who knows if there is anything there, however, anything is possible. Even though he had been told by Dr. Liu that they were allowed in there, however, it was unlikely that he would be allowed to take everything he found. The young man wanted to see more information, such as the latest research. Only there was a problem. 11th and Silkworm were already sitting in front of him, completely saddened and hungry. Shu reassured his pets, saying that they would have a feast tonight and there was nothing to worry about. It was surprising that time started going so fast after buying the phone. Usually it goes slower. He wouldn't be surprised if the phone was called a free time eater if it were an animal. Once everything was ready, Shay, 11, and even Silkworm sat down at the table, eating everything in a couple minutes. The guy told them to get full, because it wouldn't be long before practice started again. 11th was very happy about this news, the same thing that the yolkworm was. Meanwhile, the panda couldn't understand what the point of his training was. You can't unlock potential with an ice beast or mice. But only the demonic lion of the wind strikes fear in him. He is their target. But here, Shu said that he was too strong for them, as a panda could easily be killed by such a beast. Right now, he had found and copied this lion's biography. Once 11 obtained the power of control, he would also be able to master Lord-level skills. And by the way, the Silkworm will have to go with them too. He's not going anywhere. As far as Shiyu knew, the grading criteria for the grading was what beast you managed to defeat or what valuables you collected. The 11th will fight, but the Silkworm will help us collect the valuables with its threads. On the morrow, the young man was visited again by Lu Kunyi, bringing a recommendation to the Bamboo Palace, a certificate, and 10 million. With the ID, he will be able to explore the ruins. It will also give access and a trail into the antiquities of the city. But to the remains of the ice dragon, it is better to go to the remains of the ice dragon with the strength of an expert. Otherwise, you may not be able to withstand it. Finally, Shiyu asked about the personal guard. The woman said that she could be requested for research but could no longer be allowed into the secret space. The kid immediately asked, "What's in this space? It's just that if it's too dangerous, he won't go." Lu replied that this space used to be the space of the Beast Lords. There was no point in hiding it from him. The secret space is very stable, and according to the experiment results, only apprentice lords can enter. They can certainly exploit it forcibly, but the space can easily be driven to ruin, so they'll take more damage. In any case, the most precious thing there is a vestige of antiquity. Then it was a battlefield, and most likely the Lord changed it. Now it's needed to train the next generation of overlords. Once the Lord gets in, he will be in a different space that no one else will enter. It's exactly like the levels in the game. At the moment, an army of lords have entered there and are exploring the situation. Only their successes are not very much forthcoming. And according to the people who came out of there, the main objective of the creatures is to defeat, but not kill the enemy. But if the fighter is weak, there is a risk, because Dr. Liu will drop him a link to a site where to buy resources. Let him not think about the ice dragon. Right now his goal is space. It sounds dangerous, but he can handle it. If Shiyu wants to know the truth about the city, he should go there. Every single space is a clue. He and the panda should taste the palace of bamboo and stone and teach her new skills there. That would be enough. The guy knew he'd have to get certified by the Rulers Association first. That way, it would be a sure way to get in. Though he could get into space as a member of the 11th Bureau, it's best not to. Right now, though, it's best not to think about it. The most important thing is the envelope. Lu Kunyi, meanwhile, had left. Although Shu's biography is blank, but the only thing on his mind right now is animal cultivation. Finding out the truth of the story is the key to his training. Yes, and with the head young man as friendly, once he will be an official member, you can make his assistant. Shiyu told the animals that the rich woman had left. You can only rely on yourself now. The 11th Bureau is a key force in the research of the country's history. Their position is high. Even though Shay has fallen back into archaeology, after a couple months there is already a member of a cool group. There is more success in the new life than in the old one. The young man was still in the euphoria of receiving his ID, but decided to hide it. Suddenly, 11 began to roar, orbs of magic forming around him. This really scared Shay, but it turned out that it was his panda who had just grown up again. Soon he'll be a meter tall. Ever since he started feeding the steel bamboo to his pet, it had grown a lot. It's no wonder, since it's a period of rapid growth. The panda's stomach rumbled, so after 10 minutes, Shi prepared a small snack for him. While eating, he took a picture of his panda and a silkworm. One was level 6, the other level 4. They were growing much faster than normal pets. The speed of skill development is also faster than others. I even wonder what the result will be in the certification. Some time passed, and Shi was once again in the Beast Ruler Association building. The place was packed. It seems that the association's performance appraisal has brought together a lot of unpromising people. Those with potential are sent to a secret space. This is how the city has an army of lords who specialize in battle. There were a couple guys in the crowd chatting about how it was just the first time they'd seen such a crowd of people for a performance review. After a while, Shi was also led up to the registration desk. He was told that the venue for the certification would be Heavenly People Mountain from July 28th to July 30th. It was announced to him that if he was late by 9 o'clock, the registration fee would not be refunded. The registration fee was a whole 10,000 yuan. Sha wasn't very satisfied, but decided it was worth it. After 3 days, everyone who brought a contribution came to the Heavenly People Mountain. The crowds were huge. Upon arriving, Shi was astonished by so many people. "I don't want to get lost." Suddenly, someone's very tired and hoarse voice was heard from behind, calling the guy's name. He was scared as hell when he saw the face of the man who was calling him. Shu didn't understand. The certification hadn't started yet. So how could there be monsters here? But it's only Chen Kai. He asked his buddy to calm down and not yell. The young man cringed, asking why he had such circles under his eyes. Was he seriously eating a tonic like candy? It turned out that was about right. His method was really working, and the ice beast was already at the 7th level. But why had Kai come if his pet couldn't even deflect the panda's attacks? Also, the buddy was not alone. Many of their group sucked it up because the teacher promised a reward. Chen didn't forget to mention the stone statue. Surprisingly, it broke right after they left, but Shu knew everything. He didn't comment on it, saying that Kai better save his strength. He said he was, but he and his pet were going to have a blast. He and his ice beast will show exactly what he and his ice beast are capable of. They say there are 100 students at each site. They have been told by their teacher that every 20 will be allowed to enter the Trail of Old. Sha reassured his buddy, saying that he was an excellent student, so there was nothing to worry about. Especially a level 7 ice beast. But here Chen is an excellent student only in school, and outside he is easily wiped into powder. Though, since even the panda jumped above his head, his ice beast would do so as well. Shiyu asked if Kai participated in such activities, and it turned out that he did. It was embarrassing to admit that the guy himself wasn't involved, but that one was in the pet cultivation department. Chen concluded in his head about his opponent. Maybe it was to his advantage. Shay, meanwhile, was very worried. There was no hope for anything else, only stress. He decided to distract himself by asking about Zhuang and Jinjin. It turned out that they didn't participate. Suddenly, voices were heard from the crowd that impatiently called out to them Chen Kai. He said goodbye to Shay, saying that these were his classmates and he was leaving now. The young man shifted his gaze to the people in front of him. Identical dogs in uniforms must be military. Not much freedom, but the conditions are not bad and the association pays for the training. Maybe he could be part of the army too. Shiyu's pile of thoughts was interrupted by the loud whistle of the man who seemed to be leading this appraisal. Toth urged everyone to calm down. The time has come and he asks for proper behavior. We need to fill out a safety responsibility form. His name is Zhou Wanshan and he is the person in charge of conducting the certification. Besides him, there are also 4 other people present. There are many wild animals and rare resources on the mountain. All species are recorded in a guidebook, each assigned a different number of points. You have to hunt all of them to move up on the list. They will also install help call devices. There are also safety points on the mountain. The security personnel are also there. And all the trophies will be handed over to the security officers, and they will record and count the results. Their task is to score as many points as possible in 3 days. The first 20 will get the right to enter the secret place. The staff whispered as they watched the people. The average age is very small, and there are also a lot of fat people. Will they be able to participate? Joe said don't to relax. They also have their own work to do. Nothing should happen at the appraisal. You can get 20 points per critter. Sounds more dangerous than mice, though the points are higher. A python costs 4,000, but it's best not to hunt it. That's the equivalent of 200 mice. Such beasts are definitely ready for confident kidnappers. The python has good transformation skills, but it's easy to lose your mind. If you bring this skill to perfection, then perhaps this can be avoided. Finally, the young man gets to what he wants. An electric liquor for which they give him 4,000. They even brought in creatures from other countries, which means they put a lot into the event. The skills say multiplication, which allows you to walk around body size and get bigger or smaller. Would this ability be suitable for 11? Sho doesn't know if it can be trained, but he needs it. Suddenly, Joe shouted that in half an hour, the certification would officially begin. Now we can go to the stores and stock up on food and tonic products. After entering the Heavenly People's Mountain, one cannot leave there for 3 days, except in special situations. Already shopping, Shi-Yu was glad that he could stock up on equipment and food. It was interesting how much could be mined in that secret space. Suddenly from the side, Chen called his buddy by name and interrupted his thought. He timidly offered to be on the same team with him and his friends. They'll be hunting a rabid python. His ice beast will freeze him, and the team has pets that can shoot lightning. Chen said there is no requirement not to split into teams, so it is allowed, and they will share resources. Shi-Yu somehow didn't like the idea very much. He decided to let them handle it themselves. He feels that if he does everything himself, he will be more successful. When the guy came back, Joe was already announcing the start of the grading. After all, it was already 10 o'clock. Teenagers and adults can climb the mountain from as many as 4 entrances. After these words, mechanical birds appeared in the air, but no one saw them. They need them for animal tracking, for which they promise 4,000 points. He doesn't want anyone to go near them at all. Shi-Yu finally climbed up the mountain. Everyone had already dispersed there, and the young man got the 11th. The panda was rested and full of energy, even ready to get rid of any opponent. To get to the mountain area, you have to cross a forest of wild hogs. That means it's hunting time. Wild boars are likely to be quite a beast, and there are a lot of points for them because they're strong. Well, it'll warm up. The element of these animals is earth. They also have sharp fangs, which is the main skill. After a couple minutes of searching, Shi-Yu and 11th found one of the forest dwellers. A wild boar saw the man and the panda and immediately started running fast towards them. The 11th stepped forward of his lord, for it was he who did most of the work. Shi told him not to get caught by the fangs, or else you could turn into stone. Also, their main technique is to run away at a breakneck pace. The panda heard everything but did not answer anything and rushed towards the fanged pig. At that time, Shi-Yu hid behind a nearby tree so that he wouldn't get hit. The boar was very close at the moment the panda used his new skill. It was Ultra Vision. Not that it was new and completely unexplored, but it wasn't perfect either. The skill was pumped up to medium rank. 11 was doing tricks in the air, trying to ride the boar. He then activated his second skill, charging his right paw with power and swinging. He struck his opponent with great force so that his eyes turned white. The one flew back against a tree loud and hard, making a thudding sound and losing consciousness. Shi-Yu was pleased with his pet, encouraging him and saying to finish the pig. After a couple seconds, the boar woke up. Its fangs cracked and it jerked. But even this fact did not make 11 hesitate to attack. He jumped up and began to fly at the animal with an arrow. With his head, the panda smacked the pig in the face, finally knocking it off its hooves. Tying the pig with silkworm threads, Shay said they had earned 350 points. If Chen Kai and the ice beast fought the pig, they could also win, but they would have to spend more time. The young man turned to the panda, giving the end of the rope. It was his favorite part of carrying the trophy. Meanwhile, the organizers caught movement. It's the Lord Apprentice that defeated the wild pig and entered the forest. They watched through the tiny screen. The guy's panda was still a cub. How did it quickly defeat the boar? The flying mechanical bird replied that it didn't know. She will watch them at night as well. One of the managers told the other to watch. It is dangerous to be alone in the forest with wild boars. Meanwhile, Shi-Yu looked at the small pack of 4 pigs. Thoth suggested that 11 try to fight them, giving a couple of tips. The baby went to the battlefield while Shay and the silkworm hid behind a tree. The men watched this fight, marveling at the strength of the little panda. They wanted to mock this guy and his pet, and after all, it's very hard to beat 4. Even a level 10 pet could hardly defeat 4 pigs at once. The wild boars were running around as if in a circle. As the 11th approached, they thought he wanted to feed them. But it was not to be. The little panda began to do something silly and make faces. Such ignorance made them very angry. The pigs immediately dismissed all interest. The guards watched through a small screen, already ready to call for backup. And the 4 big boars at the same time aggressively began to approach 11. That one used an experienced level solidification skill, only now it wasn't one paw, but his entire body. He swung one leg and knocked down the first boar that approached the panda as if he had done it 1,000 times. Then a second one ran up to him, already happy to have gotten so close. Only it wasn't to be. 11th waved his paw, glaring angrily at his opponent and tossing him aside as well. He pushed it with such force that the pig's jaw felt like it was in slow motion. There were only 2 boars left, which he had already frightened just by his aggressive appearance. The rest of us wanted to run away, tucking our tails under us in fear, but the panda wouldn't allow it. The observers were shocked. "You call that a baby panda? He's a real wild pig exterminator. And what's with the experience level solidification? His name is Shi-Yu? Didn't he study in the Palace of Bamboo and Stone?" Except that one of the observers was a student there himself, and doesn't remember such a name. Suddenly, the mechanical bird's vision detected a silkworm. He's an apprentice. Where did the second pet come from? But apparently he's growing that one for himself. It's not easy, much less growing green silkworms. and his threads are at a good level. Could definitely become a crystal butterfly in the future. The guys were about to bet that Shay would make the top 3, but someone hurt themselves there and he was left behind. The 11th dragged 3 pig carcasses behind him. The young man was very pleased with their work. He asked his panda if he could eat all that meat in a couple days. It was clear from the pet's reaction that he was very tired and clearly wanted a refreshment. That's why they crouched down. The plan is to cross the pig forest and find a safe point. Later, you can go to the mountain area with the electric lick. Very suddenly, from the thick of the forest, there were cries. It was so loud that all the birds flew out of their nests. They were obviously the other lords. They needed help, and Shay and 11th hurried over to them. The 2 boys were being chased by a huge herd of probably 10 wild hogs. Those immediately climbed into the trees. But seeing Shiyu, they didn't even understand why he wasn't running and asked him to get up soon. After the guy, the panda kid with the huge pork carcasses also appeared. The overlords looked at the one with wide open eyes. After 11 appeared, he and his shoe lord looked at the boars very angrily. The animals, of course, were very frightened and tucked their tails, running away quickly. The tree boys looked at them incredulously, as if not believing that the beasts would not return. Then they came out and realized that they knew Shiyu. Those entered the mountain from one entrance. The guy advised finding a lone pig and rounding it up so you don't have to go deep into the woods. The disciples obeyed, and they went off on different paths. The pigs dare not come near them. Soon there will be a safe point. After a while, Shu and the panda reached the gate, happy that they could now rest. 11th and Shay entered the safe house and were greeted by several wounded men in bunks. They couldn't believe their eyes. How did this young man manage to catch 5 pigs by himself? One of them raised his voice, saying that he had only met one. However, if they let him pet the panda, his wounds would definitely heal faster. The panda meanwhile waved happily at him, in turn just as Shiyu was slightly confused. Maybe the panda has a healing skill to help them all. It seems to be getting better, though. Instead of letting himself be petted, the pet got into a modeling pose. Shiyu looked at everyone present and was amazed. They are so injured. There's even a healing pet here. The most important thing is that they don't die. Suddenly a watcher appeared, bringing a wheelbarrow. He said that he had been watching them for a long time. The panda was very strong. A man would like to help carry the catch and record the scores. Shu asked if the meat of the pigs could be eaten. The question was in what form the young man wanted to eat them, but he wasn't sure. The observer advised not to eat it. Even though the meat is delicious, it's a lot of work. At first, there was only one name in the top 3 on the podium, Z Fei, which earned 1,500 points. But after recording his scores, Shiyu got to the first place and Fei moved to the second place. They had the same number of points. The 4 after Joe were happy with the result. At least someone else had appeared in the first place. It was commendable. Even Joe praised the guy, for this was what teamwork between a pet and its master was all about. It's been a couple hours, but we're still a long way from the end of the evaluation. We need to keep watching. That observer from a safe place had spent a lot of time in the bamboo palace, but had never seen such a baby panda. This Shiyu is not so simple. Out of his own interest, he piled bamboo and stone into the palace, reminding himself. The manager remembered him, chuckling. He'd failed the test and gone to security, hadn't he? The man was ashamed of it, but he came to the point by mentioning an interesting apprentice. His panda is about 2 years old, but is very experienced. Isn't he an apprentice of the palace? Yanqi had never heard of Shiyu, so he decided to ask, maybe a new disciple. Master Lin wondered if the man was joking. All the pandas of the city were born on a cultivation base, and if they had one, then he would know. The man asked Yanqi again what that boy's name was. He was slightly worried. But hearing Shiyu's name again, he remembered Dr. Liu for recommending a supposed relative of his. Shay got her panda when she was 1.5 years old, but it's been a month since then, and it's already solidified at an experienced level, right? Master Lin said, this guy is being certified by the Heavenly Man Mountain? The former apprentice said yes. He rejoiced because this guy was a disciple of the palace. The man replied that this was not the case yet, but it might become so. Master Lin asked to send the young man to the Ironstone Mountain region. He needs to be certified there. Yanqi almost burst into tears. Shiyu hasn't been taken yet, but he's already going to teach. The man approached the young man who was quietly eating his lunch in the corner. He introduced himself by his name. Thoth advised going to the Magnet and Ironstone district, for there was a great mine with electric ironstone. It's a great panda bait, but not that the advantage is huge. Yan then put his hand on Shu's shoulder and told him to follow him. Yanqi said that he is actually a former disciple of the Bamboo and Stone Palace. Shu knows his main meaning. The one made an assumption, saying that the first was the Thunder Palm skill, and the second was the Explosive Fist skill. It turned out to be correct. In breeding approaches, the panda's flame and lightning control abilities are awakened. This requires feeding with special food. In order for a pet to master a skill outside the race, You need a special cultivation method. Electric ore alone is not enough, otherwise there would be no secret to the bamboo and stone palace. He says all this so she knows how a panda needs to be cultivated for any of the powers to be located in it. His panda can absorb the power of the electric ore with no problem. If Yu wants to enter the bamboo and stone palace, it's better to train in the magnetic ironstone area. If he feeds the panda ore, it will continuously start to be struck by electricity. This is lightning training. If his panda had mastered the thunder palm, he would have passed the specialty certification long ago. And if one were to combine the solidification skill and the thunder palm skill, it would be a might. Okay, Shay was planning on going to that neighborhood anyway. But now there's more reason. Now Silkworm, and 11 should have gone mining. Pretty soon his baby panda will get a treat. The main thing is to work a little. The people in the infirmary gave the guy a glance. Where would they get the strength to do that after those 5 pork carcasses? Shay and her pets walked across the dangerously dangling bridge, crossing to the other side. There was a warning on the map. In this area, the magnetic field could affect the lords. But for the sake of the ore, it's still worth it. They won't be here that long. He and 11 crossed into that neighborhood, and the latter immediately sniffed something out. Seeing a piece of golden-colored crystals, Yu wondered if this was the ore. It glistened in the sun, but also had very dangerous lightning bolts coming out of it. Sho suggested the panda use the solidification skill on this, and 11 was annoyed. It's a rock, and it's filled with electricity. The overlord's really messing with me. To eat electric ore, the skill of solidification is needed at an experienced level. For a toddler, this is not a problem. 11 touched the electrical crystal very gently. In the same second, he was completely electrocuted in such a way that even his fur began to billow. She thought he looked funny. He's so fierce in battle, but he can't handle ore. Finally getting the ore out of the ground, he didn't understand how it could be eaten at all. He offered his lord a taste of her by kindly extending his paws. But Yu refused. After all, the panda had an excellent healing skill. With this, one cannot worry about it. As he swallowed the ore, the guy thought that maybe he could even eat all 3 days with the ore. In the panda's mouth, it made a strange hissing noise, just like a frying pan. He blushed slightly with pleasure. Can this ore really be eaten? 11 fairly belched out small lightning bolts, and afterwards said he wanted more. Yu smiled, happy that everything was fine. In that case, they would look for more ore. After the panda eats a lot of electric ore, then it will be able to get along with electricity. In the process, the panda will be constantly electrocuted, and then the gift for using lightning will build faster. Unfortunately, there's only electric ore on this side. If there was something else here, like frost ore, it would be much better. But right now, we should be focusing on the lightning. When the solidification level reaches perfection, the lightning element will be added to it. The 11th will be a true electromagnetic cannon, combining the power of the 2 elements. Suddenly, Yu's breathtaking thoughts were interrupted by some noise from the front. Turns out it's an electroscorpion. It absorbs electricity from the ore. Apparently, he and the panda aren't the only ones who want the ore. We must eliminate the enemy. The young man ordered 11 to attack sooner rather than later and take the ore from the scorpions. He immediately ran using solidification. The ore on this mountain is overly delicious. The little boy took the scorpion by the sting. He was very angry, for all the ore on this mountain is his. Then after this action, 11 began waving the scorpion around like a cowboy. The wild beast swung back and forth to one side or the other. That should definitely scare the rest of us away. The watchers watched this fight in utter shock. They want to take over the mountain? And yet this kid and his pets have trespassed into the territory of the wild beasts of the Zipper. There's also a panda eating electric ore, but apparently the guy doesn't care about all that. He's targeting level 10 beasts. And the panda is unusually strong, which is why they were able to catch 5 wild pigs. Joe seemed to savor the word rookie, whispering it under his breath. From the look of the panda, defeating a 10th level beast was no problem for her. Except there's only electric lickers in that neighborhood. Who knows if he can handle it or not, but it's not hard to get away from them. The lizards move smoothly, so anyone who could pass the high school standards would easily escape. But if they manage to defeat the lizard, they will pay a heavy price. After all, he's famous for his punching power, and he's 4 levels higher. Have those keep watching, and if the guy comes out for a lick, have them send a rescue team. As soon as the guys got back to work, one of them immediately said that Shay had found an electric liquor. The young man and the panda ran at the smell of ore, hoping they would come out to a big catch. The smell led them to some sort of cave where 11 felt the ore was. But lo and behold, it turns out there's a little electric lizard sitting inside the cave. As soon as he discovered them, he immediately attacked with his electric lightning bolts. Yu was of course excited when he saw the lizard. Soon they would be able to defeat him. The kid handed something to his panda and ordered him to grab it so he could take the power later. After all, the electric liquor is like the main boss in some video game. If they can exhaust it, they will win. 11 was bouncing around the cave, taking and reflecting and receiving attacks from the electric liquor. That one looked pretty intimidating. Most likely the panda wouldn't be able to eat it like ore. Watching the baby panda take out the lick, Shiyu encouraged him. We must exhaust the beast. It turned out that the panda was wearing dielectric gloves. The observers didn't even know they were sold in the store. They've never seen anyone so equip their pet to do battle with electric animals. They would most likely get their points. But here Joe said that it was not worth underestimating the liquor. Shiyu continued to encourage the panda. Pretty soon, the electric lick would be exhausted. Except that in that very second it began to increase, becoming more and more pinned down by the opponents. 11 was starting to get nervous and didn't know what he should do next with this. Except Shay didn't panic. Instead, he commanded the kid and told him to use solidification. Thoth immediately took advantage, getting into a confident stance and attacking afterward. The electric liquor, on the other hand, was ready to kill. It funneled around in the cave. Only the 11th did not compromise with his opponent but began to kick. That's when the lizard was thrown off. It even shrank in size a couple times. Also, the animal from overseas flew off into the cave wall, making a dent in it. It was at that moment that the kid felt more confident, smiling evilly. The observers were intrigued. The situation has changed, but the panda doesn't seem to be holding out. Joe was sure that both opponents would get hurt. It was more than obvious. Except that 11th used his healing power by roaring loudly. The electric lick towered above him, with a lot of lightning under its body. But even such a dangerous sight didn't scare the little guy. He still pounced from above. Shiyu, in turn, was overjoyed and cheered up his panda while also admonishing. The observers were now shocked. So the panda's hardening level is very strong, and is now using this skill to retaliate. And 11 ate a lot of electrical ore. Is the reaction starting? After being hit with the solidification skill, the electric lick started to deflate. He went from being a huge ball to an animal, from being the size of a soccer ball. The panda fell powerless following the lick, but still grabbed it, holding it tightly to his side. He and the Lord finally got it right. They are just huge, well done. Now 11 has 2 new skills. Electricity is nothing to them, but the second one. 2 new skills had already been recorded, but they were only interested in the second one, as the first one would be easy to master. The skill was called multiplication, and its level was quite high, which couldn't be helped. Multiplication allowed one to decrease or increase in size, though in smaller sizes the power is weakened. One of the observers was looking at the screen where Shiyu was stretching the lizard. He hadn't even won, but he had already decided to bully him. Joe said that the newcomer looked quite intimidating. You couldn't even tell that he was an ordinary student. Meanwhile, in the cave, the young man looked around. It appeared that there was plenty of ore inside to keep 11 full. Every day it will give him 2 pieces of electrical ore, but this energy will have to be released. But the lizard will be their generator. Let the little panda use the electricity to his heart's content in training. The electric lizard, on the other hand, was very upset. Even though he wasn't human, Shay was even more not human. The one did not hear, but only told the panda that this night they would rest in this cave, practice, and leave. The guards from the safe base were even shocked, even though Yanqi had given all this advice. However, there was no way he expected to catch a liquor, and even use it as a training tool. The next day, the young man and the panda were quite awake, having had a good night's sleep. Because by 11 o'clock, 11 had caught 2 more licks. With dielectric gloves and panda skills, it came pretty easily. It's just worth it not to give the lickers a lot of food, then they can't make more electricity. Then they won't be able to attack back. They'll just produce energy, like generators. It played a huge role in their training. The 11th was absorbing energy. He was building it up until he was emitting lightning bolts like licks. The one then looked at his paws. Those really were emitting a lot of lightning, and it seems the skill was mastered at a medium level. Shiyu was shocked at this turn of events. How did this little guy manage to learn the Thunder Palm on his own? The young man stooped lower to examine the lightning bolts, and afterward said that they quickly needed to question that guy. He and the panda quickly dashed back to safety, as if they were being chased by a dozen lizard men. Barely managed to find Yanqi, but after finding it, Shu immediately asked which Thunder Palm he was referring to. He was amazed when he saw Shiyu's panda. It was unbelievable. In one day, 11 was able to achieve this level of lightning. How could they do that? After all, in theory, even if one feeds on ore and receives current discharges, one cannot master this element so easily. Why is his panda so different from the others? It takes a lot of effort to master the element. Shiyu said that they were just trying hard, but after all, Yan had seen them constantly practicing and fighting, also eating ore. Such a quick mastery of techniques was abnormal, but to this the young man only shrugged. It's probably all about fast healing. The skill of this element heals wounds quickly. Shiyu was very satisfied with the effectiveness of 11's training. His skills were growing rapidly. Although the Thunder Palm is weak, it's this one. You have to reach a higher level to enter the palace. The young man was confident that this would all work out for them without much difficulty, and then they would enter the bamboo and stone palace. By the way, he noticed that there is a special connection between skills. Once a skill is mastered, it becomes easier to master another. Thunderpalm could be considered an additional, and since it was mastered, the emission of electric current would also come out. Shu kindly asked Yanqi to write down all their points. The man assumed that he would go back for ore after that. Only, as it turned out, it was no longer in that area. Shiyu had taken all the ore, and it was scary. Ore was worth even more points than licks, and 11 would eat that too? After that, Yan dialed Master Lin again. He answered almost immediately, asking how the progress was going. He said that Shiyu had already returned from the mountainous region after training. His panda ate all the ore of the neighborhood. They caught 3 electric licks and also possessed a thunderpalm. Master Lin stared at the phone in utter shock, and then incomprehensibly shouted, "Is he kidding me?" Right now, Shiyu must find food for the silkworm. They had been together all this time, but he still hadn't eaten. The kid has helped them a lot and tried hard all this time, so now they need to reward him. The food prepared for him will be at the 9th to 10th level of transformation, and the rest of the time you can feed him something simpler. Yes, and it's only during the transformation phase that the silkworm will have the greatest chance of learning skills. Otherwise, only the filaments are getting stronger. But which is the best direction to grow silkworms? Perhaps we should choose a rare and valuable path, such as an extra-type butterfly. It can control the rays and will become a light fairy butterfly. Or maybe she'll even become an ice phoenix butterfly and go from the lowest level to the most valuable level. You can also choose a rare element, such as space or time. If he has a pet with teleportation ability, he can quickly escape from the enemy. If Shiyu wants to have a rare skill in a silkworm, the nutrition must match. Where can he find the food for him to become an ice butterfly? Even so, it's too early to think about it. Now we need to raise a high-level silkworm. Suddenly, the young man thought of Dragon Mustache, a level 1 spirit plant, the favorite food of pets with threat ability. The glow they were looking for appeared up ahead. Shiyu immediately rushed forward with 11. Meanwhile, there was someone lurking in the bushes. A purple and incomprehensible beast. The baby pandas and Shay got close to a plant called Dragon Whiskers. At the same moment, a wild beast flew out from behind the bushes, jumping up and afterward, lying on top of them. Shiyu was glad that they had finally found the silkworm's lunch, but it was not to be. The beast was a spider, and it was hunting 11. At the worst possible moment, he grabbed the panda with his web. The spider was simply huge, and its body looked like a skull. It was going to swallow the panda. It was a wolf spider that they give 4,000 points for. Apparently, it was guarding the dragon's mouth. 11th needed to activate the hardening sooner rather than later. Toth listened to the idea of cutting the cobwebs with his wool and immediately activated the skill. Hugely fortunately, he managed to get out of the cocoon and jumped into the air. Shiyu thought that now was the perfect opportunity to activate the Thunderpalm skill. That's why he commanded the baby panda to activate the lightning bolts, aiming them at the spider. 11 was roughly tossed aside, answering the thunderous blow. It crippled the pet. He still lacked the strength to defeat the wolf spider, which was frustrating. The young man said he had to find the right moment to push the animal away. She said to cast it away and use the Thunderpalm along with the hardening. Then 11 strode confidently toward his opponent, planning to attack again. The first to attack was, of course, the wolf spider, blowing its purple web at the baby. But at that moment, he managed to skillfully dodge by bending his knees slightly. He then used his skill and grabbed onto the spider's stream of threads with his paws. 11 swung the beast in different directions, one side and then the other. He was then helicoptered into the air, where he flew around for a while longer. Shiyu now commanded to activate the Hardening and Thunderpalm skill to finally end this. When all this was done, the guy once again commanded, saying to activate the Thunderpalm with his paws, and then do a full body rotation. Only after all this can one shoot the spider. 11 immediately realized that it was probably a new combined technique. The baby panda kept spinning around, creating a vortex of air out of itself. Then the panda was finally able to combine everything together and out came a huge blob of lightning. Now 11's combat strength is now above a 10th level wild beast. There are most likely many of these spider beasts in the vicinity, but they have a remedy against these creatures. When the wolf spider fell to the ground, he and Shiyu were overjoyed. Next, you can continue to use Ultra Vision. The young man's name reappeared on the pedestal. He was on the first place, and was almost 15,000 points ahead of all the students. Joe said, "This is very commendable, even though they had luck with the lizard. But the battle with the wolf spider proves their strength. Level 10 beasts are very strong, and this panda kid defeated them while at level 6. He definitely deserved his place." From the bird speakers, the announcement of the end of the certification was finally heard. The security officers lead everyone out of the mountains. Several people were relieved to hit the ground. It was finally over, and they could go home. One young man even ran the fastest. He needed a shower and a good meal immediately. Shiyu thought that they had done a good job. The winnings are 10,000, something he will spend on himself, such as buying a tonic. Coming down the mountain, the guy noticed that from 100 people, there were about 73 left. Many have gone down for various reasons, such as dangerous injuries that make it impossible to continue certification. Chief Joe shrieked that since they were still standing here, they were still capable of something. But if they couldn't even do it here, what can we say about an ancient monument? Let's not even think of participating in the specialty certification. It's better to go back home to train the pets. Now the first 20 participants will get the right to enter the Trail of Antiquity. In a week they will be taken there. In first place was still Shiyu. The second place guy was only 10.5 points behind him. Everyone was amazed that someone had accumulated as much as 20,000, but no one knew Shiyu. He was meanwhile already moving away from the crowd. The test was difficult. Time to exchange the money. Chen Kai at that time noticed his buddy with his side vision and abruptly turned around. He shouted at his back for the guy to wait for him, but the Beast Lord dashed off. Chen was dissatisfied that he had gathered so much. After all, 20,000 was 5 10th level beasts. As soon as the name from the first place was heard from the young man's mouth, the two guys immediately surrounded Kai. It turned out that this lord was studying in the city. Because of him, he bought pills of light. The boys immediately became excited, for they also wanted pills of light. Meanwhile, Shiyu went to collect his money. There were 2 men behind the counters, but the surroundings were empty. One of them was Yan Qi, who offered to exchange points. The guy didn't mind. On the contrary, it was nice to see a familiar face. Speaking of which, he told Mentor Lin about how his panda had acquired the Thunder Palm skill. Toth invites Shu to the Palace of Bamboo and Stone in his free time. They have special fodder, and also the mentor will impart the knowledge of the Thunder Palm to him. Shiyu smiled widely, happy for this opportunity. He had nothing more to say. Yan Qi escorted him with a glance. Still, Master Lin is a very good judge of character. At that time, Shu had already moved a far distance away when a thought came to his mind. That man is the father of the girl who studies pandas. Maybe he can teach him something other than Thunderbolt. All right, that's enough of that now. Time to get back to civilization. She and the panda and Silkworm can finally relax in the bathroom and eat some proper food. And most importantly, his huge and comfortable bed. It's been so long since they've seen each other. When Shay has money, he'll buy himself a big robot, like in Transformers, so he can become both a car and a house, so he can live a normal life in case of emergency. In a week's time, they will be taken to the trailhead. Time drags on too long. Though maybe go when he's a little stronger, or not wait that long. Although no, it's best to go now and not be restricted. There's no difference. Although since Qingyi said there was no danger, it's more like a place to practice. He'll just watch. Just need to start by spending money on high-level silkworm feed. Also supplies for the long term. Of course, it will be better if the silkworm finds its own way of development. If you're lucky, you can also find suitable raw materials in the secret space of the vintage trail. The young man once again tasted that site, which said all the same things as before. The website Lu Qingyi gave him was not bad after all. Apparently, they also prepared a reward to increase the motivation of the lords. The unadulterated pills are of much better quality than the pills of light. Only they cost 100,000. But they were laced with beast plant sprouts, white flower queen bee pollen, and dragon frog oil. It helps beast lords regain their strength in a short period of time, even when they are extremely tired. The pills seem familiar, and they have a good effect. I guess I'll still have to pay 100,000 or buy one. The guy spent over $1 million at a time. Now there's not 10% of the 10 million he had. But with the help of expensive tonics, 11 would learn high-level skills. It's worth it. After this thought, Beast Lord Shiyu fell into slumber. The guy lay quietly to himself, snoring relaxedly and almost drifting into a deep sleep. Except he clearly wouldn't get any sleep, as 11 jumped on Shay, yelling for him to get up. The young man has been sleeping all day, and he's already very hungry. Let him feed his panda. Shaw smiled, realizing how much energy he had expended. The silkworm still had the energy to train, so there was no need to feed it. The next day, those decided that they would go to the Palace of Bamboo and Stone. They'll see if the steel bamboo can be steamed. 11 is eating more and more. Suddenly, his phone buzzed to say his purchase was on its way. Then someone above the guy yelled out that he was ready to land, and Shay better step back. He smiled as he saw the owner of the voice. It was an air delivery. So unusual. A man flew on a huge eagle with a box of goods in his paws. They landed, and the courier took out Shiyu's box from the huge container. The student was asked to sign. The young man did so, but it was as if his thoughts were not here. Suddenly he asked if the man was a beast lord, and it turned out he was. He just became a specialist this year, so he apologizes if something is wrong. Shay is amazed that in this world, even for couriers, the requirements are very high. It must pay a lot. Meanwhile, the courier didn't understand why the student needed so many tonics. Not that it was any of his business, though. They said goodbye, and he flew away on his eagle. Opening the box, the guy smiled contentedly, scoping out exactly what he needed. This is the same tonic that was several times more than he had been in the past. Shiyu called 11 over to him to test his skills and choose one. The baby panda approached without any hesitation and began to wait for the end. Their new multiplication ability was already fully ready to be learned. There was also still an absolute sleep skill that could be upgraded. But since they have very few toners, only the necessary skills can be improved. In the augmented state, 11 has excellent combat strength, and in the reduced state, his speed and ability to regenerate will increase. The best thing to do right now was to improve this particular multiplication skill. After deciding that, the young man popped the pill into his mouth. After that, he opened the handbook and immediately started studying that skill. They'll need it. 11th decided that he would try twice as hard for another new skill that he had obtained effortlessly. When it was over, the guide turned on recovery mode and gave the time for it. Shiyu didn't think that the recovery time would double. It seemed like the maximum was 72 hours, but that wasn't the case. The guide decided that this was definitely not the way to go. He wouldn't wait nearly 200 hours. That's why he ate the spirit bean. He was immediately invigorated, and green dots appeared all around him. Apparently, learning high-level skills is limited because there's still 2 more 24 hours to wait. Until Shiyu's own strength appears, he won't be able to improve his skills even with a tonic. At the same time, 11th waited for his skills to increase and activate. There was a storm going on inside, which meant a skill was being upgraded or activated. When it was over, the baby panda struck a confident pose and opened his eyes. Shiyu asked, "Did everything work out? Could he get big or vice versa?" 11 pushed himself up, checking to see if he could do anything with his body. His head became much larger, but his fur became unruly. Then the rest of his body parts got bigger, or rather his paws and even his tail. You could call him a toddler, but 11 had raised himself to the point where he was banging his head on the ceiling. He liked that kind of power. Next time, they could make a boar look like a boar. After these words, the panda's stomach began to rumble violently. He wanted to eat. Apparently, magnification takes up a lot of his strength. It was a disadvantage. Okay, now they're going to see how much the panda can shrink. He couldn't get 3 or 4 times smaller. The 11th becomes twice as big when enlarged, and half as small when reduced. Okay, now it's time for lunch, but if the panda eats in a shrunken state, they'd be a great savings. Then 11 was not happy with such an unfunny joke. He's hungry! Some time passed after lunch. Shiyu was fiddling with his reference book. 1 holy bean can compensate for a period of weakness for 120 hours. But if you eat 2 or 3 beans, you won't overdose because they are of the lowest quality. And wait, since beans do more good than 48 hours, isn't he overpaying? Can't we just eat half a bean? 1 bean is worth 100,000 yuan, and the other plant in his hands is 50. Does that mean you can substitute a tonic? Little Tsang's mustache isn't an option, though. The queen bee, on the other hand. This thing came from nectar, which is bee milk. It is certainly much more effective and powerful in this world than it is on Earth. It's so cool and high when you have money and don't have to think about how to live until tomorrow. Those chewable capsules from the drugstore restore the body forcibly. Moreover, they have no effect of reducing the recovery period. Apparently 10 million won't even be enough for 1 silkworm. Shay will keep some, buy more funds later. Then reset the recovery meter to 0 and decide what to do sometime later. Suddenly there was some other package at the bottom of the box, but Shay hadn't ordered anything else. There was a note taped to it. It was a gift from a secret admirer, some kind of costume. What pleased Shiyu the most was not the clothes, but the very fact that he had a secret admirer. Meanwhile, in the palace of bamboo and stone, the young man's visit was eagerly awaited. His talents far surpassed those of all his disciples. The master found one who could absorb all his knowledge, the one who even learned Thunder Palm in a day. Suddenly, Mentor Lin was interrupted by a woman's voice. His daughter was calling for her father from the 2nd floor. The girl suggested we go out to lunch somewhere in the Dragon King's palace. The man rudely asked if his daughter had finished her workout. Ta mewled slightly and the man exhaled. Uh-oh. That girl. At the age of 18, she passed the master's specialty certification. But of course, she then changed it to breeding and started researching the evolution and how pandas evolve. Lin doesn't know why he agreed to it. In the end, she never did any research. Suddenly, the latter turned to his daughter, asking if she knew Shiyu. She seemed to have mentioned something. The man had heard this name from Shiuju before, but when Dr. Lu spoke of him, he realized it was the same person. The girl immediately glowed. Is he planning to enter their palace? Master said he would just help him with his training. By the way, does she know how his panda has evolved since he left? But Shiuju doesn't know. He never came back, so there were no questions. I guess it's okay, right? But Lin darkened, saying that nothing was normal. He, along with the panda, participated in the Lord competition on the mountain and won 1st place. Shiuju was shocked. This couldn't be. Only 3 months ago the panda had a level 3. The man said he couldn't believe it either. They will see everything as soon as he comes. If Shiyu is even half as good as they say he is, that would be great. Right now, the 6th level of the solidification skill is a tremendous power, which is simply unbelievable. Here, Shiuju once again disturbed her father's thoughts, asking if they would go out to eat or not. The man was very angry, so he blurted out a serious no. Meeting such a talented person is more important than filling his belly. He must find out what's so great about Shiyu and the panda. The girl didn't realize. Would he keep standing like that? She just told her he would. Then the man was petrified. That was a twist! That one gave a command to his ward to tell Shiyu to come back after lunch in case of anything. After lunch, Shu was just about to arrive, knocking on the large gate of the bamboo and stone palace. Someone opened the doors so quickly that it seemed as if the person was waiting right underneath them. The guy was met by Shuju. Shiyu immediately recognized the damsel. She's raising pandas! Tam smiled, saying that they hadn't seen each other for quite some time. The girl then let the young man inside, his father waiting for him with tea for a long time. Master Lin, as soon as he saw him and his daughter, invited Shu to sit down. Shuju noticed that Shu really isn't the same as before, but she can't believe what her father is saying. The man started, saying what Dr. Liu had said about him. If he wants to learn, he will teach him everything he knows. Thunder Palm and Explosive Fist are from the most valuable skills. They feed them expensive fodder, but it doesn't compare to the value of the books. Lin said that Shu would be able to use the 3 training grounds and equipment. Meals will also be provided by the palace. At this point, even Shuju was shocked. If the young man has any questions, let him ask. He does not need to be trained with other students. Shuju was shocked at how kind her father was. Not even her. Master Lin finally took his first sip of tea. A talent like Shiyu needs a special approach. The lad too proceeded to tea, smiling and thanking the manager heartily. 11 loves to eat, and here they'll be doing it for absolutely free. As for the silkworms, there will always be food for them outside. The right thing in agreeing to join the bureau. As far as Lin realized, his panda had already learned the Thunder Palm skill. Also, his level was already at the experienced level. Shuju, when she heard the positive response from Shu, started to think that the dialogue was going out of bounds. The manager said, "The first thing to do is to train the lightning skill. It's a little lighter than the explosive fist." The kid agreed because you can't take on too much, and an explosive fist might be necessary for ordinary pandas. But 11 wasn't so simple. He's already doing well, so there's no need to acquire that skill now. Maybe later. Before they went to the playground, Sha Yu should get to know the other disciples. That one would have to make contact with them. After introductions, Shuju will tell him about the equipment. The girl, meanwhile, glanced at Sha. Was he really worth all this kindness? The man here mentioned Yan Qi, but Lin didn't really understand their whole situation. The manager wants to see him on the battlefield with the other disciples. At that moment, Shuju couldn't help but shriek with joy. Shiyu wasn't afraid of the test. It wasn't difficult for him to show off in battle. Usually in their palace, apprentices at the training level are subjected to serious training, a platform that the young man was brought to for basic training. Sha watched the common panda's reaction to the warm-up after eating. 11 would run as fast as he could if he were them. The man was quick to explain that pandas are very lazy. They are trying to correct this, otherwise there will be trouble on the battlefield. The young man said that his panda is disciplined. If it does not fulfill the norm, it does not eat, because then the balance will be disturbed. Shiuju looked at the guy incredulously. This sounds very unrealistic. What did he do to 11? Except that Shu remembered all the panda's words about having to repay the care with sweat and blood, so he kept silent. Lin continued, saying that after hardening, pandas have sparring sessions to practice hardening. Those pandas are about level 8 to 9. He will choose the strongest one for him. The master called out to Jiang Rui, who was sitting with his panda in the bushes, praising her for her work. The man said they would go down now, and the way he would wait for them for a while. The kid asked incomprehensibly what had happened, except that they had just decided to introduce him to a new student. Hearing of such news, the guy perked up slightly, interested in what was going on. More voices were heard from far away that seemed to recognize Shuju. One of them said to practice better today. The others sighed theatrically, saying, "What if the sister hurts herself? Then he could bandage her leg, that's fine." Manager Lin ordered the training to stop. He wanted to introduce the trio to the new disciple. The guy who's crazy about Shuju said it's fine. Now the manager's going to swear at the new guy. Sha said hello to Jiang Rui. The latter said that it was a pleasure to meet him, and if anything, he would answer questions. After introductions, Lin said to let him fight Shi Yu. Such a request was surprising. With just one guy, Qian Rui would definitely be able to handle it, so there was definitely no need for him to panic. The rest of the guys sat on the curb. I didn't even get to show off for my sister. They thought that the mentor wanted to show the full power of their palace. Meanwhile, Rui had already prepared the panda. Shi Yu looked very confident as he took out his baby panda 11. Everyone stared at them in astonishment. It's only a small, level 6 panda. Apparently it's a beginner. Panda Jiang is at level 10, also possessing the skill of solidifying at proficient level. Someone like him would definitely not be able to handle it. Master Lin was slightly tense. Shiuju was also tense. Everyone was in anticipation of the battle. Rong gave the kid a head start by asking him to attack first. If they did it first, she would lose immediately. Yu, on the other hand, sent 11 forward into battle without any hesitation. Xiuzhu was surprised at this speed, and Lin was surprised at the strength with which the little guy flew. Zhang Rui commanded his panda to repel this newcomer's attack, dubbing it over. Even though the panda looks pretty powerful, it's still a toddler. Chewy was 100% confident in his panda's hardening skill. It had never once let him down. Shu said 11 knew how to proceed and left it all on his shoulders. The kid easily felled the big panda with a thunderous palm. Zhang was astonished, his eyes going wide. Could a panda have such a skill at level 6? And unfortunately, the time to undo the hardening skill is long gone. The 11th opponent's panda simply flew off into the wall, emitting electricity. The master was shocked because the thunder palm was not a lie. Was it really a level 6 panda? It's impossible for a baby panda to make that kind of progress. He's that rare. The more it seems, the panda has been practicing hard since gaining the skill, though it won't get to the point of complete loss of strength. However, Zhang Panda might still be paralyzed, still couldn't believe it. The senior panda finally stood up, growling very loudly and unhappily. Then she got to her paws. 11 stood in front of her as well, ready to defend or to attack. Chu activated his hard claws and commanded his panda to attack first. If they lose, he will suffer a huge disgrace. He's a rookie, even though he has a thunder palm. He just doesn't have the right. His pet just can't handle that kind of workload and extra training. Yu ordered his panda to stay still and keep this form. Only then should it attack. 11 freaked out, but it was explained to him that this was a great opportunity to show solidification and lightning together. Then the panda flashed his eyes dangerously, using his experienced hardening skill. He then activated the thunder palm as well, grinning and glaring at his opponent. Chewy didn't understand how this was even possible. He not only wielded lightning, but also an experienced rank solidification. This level is even higher than all the disciples in this palace. And he's still just a kid. At that time, 11th was rolling through his techniques, attacking skillfully and easily. Janya Panda, on the other hand, was very angry at the brat. She felt bad too. But in the end, the final blow was decisive. It threw the panda very far away. So far away that the big guy landed right at the feet of his lord. Yu struck a special pose, thankful for a good fight. He liked it. Chewy at the same time got down on one knee, accepting defeat. The cub is very good. Zhang wasn't sure if the person who was introduced to him as a rookie was definitely a rookie. Perhaps he took private lessons from Master Lin. He's so strong we can assume he's his own son. The man told Juyu to nurture his panda and the rest of us to keep practicing. Xiuju couldn't believe what she saw. Was this really the 11th she knew? The other students' voices came from behind, asking about Shu. Except she angrily told them to continue studying. They stepped back, musing. This newcomer was a monster of an honor student, coming to annoy everyone. Meanwhile, Master Lin led his new disciple away behind him. It was unclear why. 11, however, thought that the man's face seemed very familiar to him. Finally, they walked into a huge and spacious room where Shuju was waiting for them. 11 immediately ran up to his sister, very happy to see her again. It was still the panda she remembered, but why had he gotten so strong? The manager said it's the best panda he's ever seen. Shiyu is taking excellent care of her. Malal raised a paw. Of course he did. Now he remembered that he had seen this uncle at the base before. Xiaoyu thanked the man and the man continued, saying that their prospects were limitless. And unfortunately, he can only teach the two of them a very small part of it. After all, they already know enough. He drew his eyebrows down to the bridge of his nose, his eyes beginning to glow very dangerously, as if something scary was about to happen here. But a large blue portal just appeared behind the man, and someone appeared from there. First a small black nose and a confident look came out, mouth with a grin. Then the huge paws came out as well, that each seemed to be as much as 2, if not 3 times the size of 11. The panda was twice as tall as his own lord, as if it wasn't him pet, but Master Lin. That one was going to show the young man how to train his hardening and thunder palm skills. The guy and his pet were simply amazed at the size of the fighting panda. She was Manager Lin's pet. Together with her, he wanted to give them a few training references. The man said that different levels of mastery of the hardening skill are described in the handbook. But if you hit the thunder palm with a powerful energy discharge, you can put the opponent in an anesthetic state. But the penetration power of his panda was still small. Otherwise, one could break through the opponent's hardening and hit him with a single strike. The panda manager will now demonstrate this technique on the equipment. She charged her paw with Thunderbolt, intending to strike the wall here hourly. There was steam coming out of the panda's mouth, unclear for exactly what reason. Then that one used lightning and penetrated the equipment. This is how the current penetration looks like in the experienced level Thunder Palm skill. At this level, even very hard steel can be broken through with the Thunder Palm skill. Shiyu was amazed and his panda was delighted. This is the true Thunder Palm, not what they have. But when it comes to the deeply learned level, the man cut himself short and said that the kid lacked fortitude during the strike. At a deeply learned level, the Thunderbolt skill moves to a more balanced state. You can hold the electric current right in your paws like you're wearing gloves, and also use Thunderclap with both paws. And now the manager Panda will show the Thunder Palm of the experienced level. It was completely energized. It was just like that, the Panda started to glow. Now we need to bring the Thunder Palm skill to perfection. The skill at the experience level has a greater conductivity of current, so it paralyzes the enemy more strongly. In this instant, it is possible to deliver a powerful blow. It is also possible to achieve unprecedented speed. His Panda demonstrated this by showing everything gradually. The speed was simply extraordinary. Once you have brought the skill to a fine level, the piercing ability of the current combined with the speed of the Panda will be able to equal real lightning. That sounded very powerful and it looks cool. 11 now wants to do the same and will try harder. But the manager said it's nothing like that yet. It's something else to strive for. Apparently a higher level Thunder Palm is more effective. It was interesting to see. Master Lin clucked his hands to let the Panda know what to do now. Apparently this gesture had been with them for a long time. The Panda held his hand up, making incomprehensible gestures again. It looked dangerous. His paw was powerfully charged with an energy current. She even wondered how it wouldn't be charged at them. The Panda then used another skill. It was painful to look at him, for he was glowing. It seems to be a combination of Thunder Palm and solidification. Very interesting. Shujin said that he had the right idea while hanging out on the phone. It's just cooler than the usual combination. Combining Thunder Palm and hardening skills, the Panda moves to a fine level. The combination of two skills at a fine level is called a hidden meaning. Thundershell is one of the hidden meanings of her father's Panda. With arcane sense, the Panda can defeat even ruler-level creatures. True combining skills is difficult. The Panda must possess the Thunder Palm and hardening skill at the same time. Applying skills at the same time is definitely very challenging for him. First, you need to think carefully about whether the pet can use them at the same time. Then you have to consider whether they will oppose each other internally. If you can handle it, you'll be fine. Of course you have to raise the levels, but if the level is high enough, you can use everything in combination with another. The lords have a phrase. Combo is not the strongest advantage. The strongest advantage is strong skills. Briefly put, if a pet has two fine level skills and can combine them is called sacral sense. Meanwhile, the manager was thinking about the fact that it was very early for Shiyu to know the term as a sacred meaning. Even experts are very early for this. After all, not every expert can train their Panda to a fine level. However, if Shiyu's talent is further worked hard, things will definitely work out. When Lin had already decided to let him find out early, Shu asked if the Thundershell could be refined. The master and his Panda stared at the guy dumbly. Shiyu didn't understand why he asked. Toth explained that Pandas' eyesight is not very good. Can they see their actions at this speed? But the girl said that there are no perfect sacred meanings. With such a trump card up his sleeve, when fighting not with a slow opponent, success will be. The young man began to reason in his voice. If there was some skill that allowed you to anticipate the enemy's movements, it would be cool. Shu looked at 11, lining up a chain to study. They need solidification after Thunder Palm, Supervision, and a fine-level Thundershell. This is in line with the sacred meaning of the three skills. Wouldn't it be better to combine the skills of solidification, Thunder Palm, and multiplication at a fine level if facing a stronger opponent? Master said that the problem is not mastering skills related to thinking and feeling. He thinks learning skills is easy, doesn't he? Then go ahead. However, the man likes Shiyu's train of thought. If you add a new skill to the sacred meaning, you can increase the efficiency. Truthfully, this goal is very far away for him. Right now, his goal is to raise the level of the Thunder Palm. Only after that can you try simple combinations of Thunder Palm and hardening. It is not easy to improve the palm skill because it is not natural for pandas. To train a skill to proficiency, the animal must control strength and have physical endurance. If a mistake is made during the transition from experienced, the pet can get injured. Each stage has its own aspect. The master explained to the young man the peculiarities of each step, but there were still many details. It is not easy to master all this. Shiyu shouted that he would try his best. But 11th realized that the lord and this uncle had different approaches. The man, meanwhile, thought that hardening and thundering palm would be enough for specialist certification. If you take the skills to perfection and combine them with multiplication, the Panda can wipe out an entire city. When it was over, Shuju was showing off the base training equipment. You can use them as much as you want. Little Panda looked out the window of the room. It didn't even look like training was in full swing. But they left that room and walked to the doors of the electric training room. The girl led him inside. There you can practice electricity resistance with the pandas. There is also a pool that conducts current for water battles. 11th was about to jump in there, telling the lord what he wanted, but he was ordered to take his time. With all this equipment, 11's training would become many times more effective and more complete. Best of all, there's free water and food. That's very good. Finally it was over. Shiuju knocked on her father's office and quietly walked in. He asked if their guests enjoyed everything and if they were able to eat it all. The girl said that, and everything was fine. However, Shiyuya's panda ate a lot. The man said it's quite normal. She is disciplined and practices a lot. Except his daughter read out the list of raw materials that the panda had eaten. Lin was shocked by this. It is, after all, their double portion of food that their pandas eat after a workout. When the master wanted to object, the girl said he ate it after only one battle, and the man swallowed the words. Looks like he'll have to stock up on a huge amount of groceries. But will he be able to provide that when she grows up? Possessing the ability to sleep absolutely, 11th can digest food faster in his sleep. In this case, there is no need to worry about him eating too much. Everything will be digested. At this rate, Shiyu could bring him to a supernatural level in just a couple of months. If you feed a panda properly, it will go supernatural in 10 years. At that age, pandas are already adults. But the Lord can speed up the process. For example, 11th can go supernatural in 2 years. Then there's no reason to worry about his level in terms of certification, but she's level. He definitely needs to find means of tempering, as tonic means are in short supply. At the panda breeding base, Shiuju gave him a flash drive that recorded the stages of training. He was looking at a flash drive in the shape of a small panda. It looked very funny. The girl, however, had already realized that her father had placed all his hope on Shiyu. Thoth hopes that 11 can transcend all the boundaries of his species. Suddenly, the kid's eyes got very wide and Shiuju looked away. But then she heard a loud shout warning her to be careful. Shiyu said that he would definitely use all these resources. He and 11 will do well. If the palace feeds the panda enough, he won't fail their expectations. Shiuju doesn't want the guy just eating here for free and not bringing results. She said 11 got a good master. She's calm. As soon as the panda and Shiyu were alone, the little guy jumped up and said that he couldn't wait to find out where his isle was. 11th is getting harder, but getting skills for nothing is not good. They are bound to be compensated by labor, and the little one agreed to this. Finally, the young man proceeded to award the mid-level Thunder Palm. It's very powerful, but luckily the baby should be able to get to the perfect level. And when Shay finished, those finally moved on to serious training. Everyone was tired in the morning, but they had managed to sleep for a couple hours. 11 was still asleep, but Shiyu had to get up earlier. As he rose, the guy's back crunched slightly from sleeping in an uncomfortable position. It's a good thing he's taking tonics, because with that kind of energy expenditure, he should be sleeping through the evening. 11th already had the Thunder Palm skill at an experienced level. Now we need to watch and learn some more. When I went out into the yard, it turned out that the baby was not sleeping, but sitting on the rocks. He looked very upset. Shiyu didn't realize what was wrong with his pet. Pretty sad and so cute you comfort it. The guy walked over to the animal, asking what was even wrong. He's very quiet today. As it turns out, solidifying a deeply learned level and palming off on an experienced one is hard to combine. They tried all night, but it didn't work. The boy looked at the silkworm and thanked it for understanding. They'd been practicing all night and it was probably scared. It's more about not having enough, but that's okay. They'd better eat first. 11 looked at the young man with a pleading look in his eyes. He has such a kind lord. Now they have to go to the palace again. This is very tiring. He will no longer allow the panda to train at night. Then he eats a lot. It's better to put him to bed right after dark. Maybe we can order delivery? The man saw Shiyu from the doorstep and asked if he wanted to explore the country's trail since he had passed the certification. According to the feedback from the warlords, that place is best for training. Master Lin, on the other hand, needs to leave the city for a while. If Shu has any questions, he can contact Shuju. The lad, after visiting the Palace of Bamboo and Stone, went to a stall nearby. The man behind the counter said that the entire city of Pinchung, though no, even the entire Ice City buys food for the pandas from him. Manager Lin said Shiyu can freely use the resources and the delivery is also included. The kid got very excited, saying that in that case he needed a triple serving of daily nutrition for every day. That statement made the salesman's hair stand on end, but he organized it anyway. They have food and tonic. Now you can start practicing a new skill. This skill was called high-level intimidation. It allows you to intimidate your opponent with force. Starting today, 11th is the king of pandas. He's going to be very strong. The baby's body began to change significantly, as well as his aura in general. His paws have increased in size slightly. Does that mean he's moved to the next level? The muzzle has also gotten bigger, with the teeth being much larger than before. From now on, the little one needed more food, which was why Shiyu ordered a triple portion. But it was worth it, because as the size of the panda increases, so does the skill rank.